Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to DSL5. As you can see, we have not yet got started with all the speakers. We still have people arriving here in London. We are at the Figma office, super excited to have everyone here. And for those of you already logged on, welcome and just hang tight. You are going to be able to see everybody getting settled, and there's going to be probably about, I'm going to say 10 or so minutes. So hang tight, grab a drink, get yourself comfortable, and we're about to kick off DSL5 from the Figma office in London. Thank you. See you in a bit. Us. I hope everyone's comfortable. You all look like you're having a great time eating, drinking. How good is the food? Yeah, people on the live feed, people on the live feed, the food is great. Next time, if you can make it in person, try to. I hope you all having a great time at home as well, with a nice drink in your hand and some food in front of you. So let's welcome everybody. So welcome, welcome, welcome. This is our 5th Design System London, or DSL, and we are coming live to you from London, from the Figma office. Very excited to be here. Yes, we now have people in the front row. We have 2 brave people that sat in the front row. I appreciate your support. So I want to say a little extra welcome to anybody who has been with us before, whether you have been in person, because I can see a lot of familiar faces. I know you have been at the conference. I recognize some of you from our previous hybrid event. I even recognize some people from the conference recently that we did in partnership with Zero Height. So to all of you, thank you so much for coming back. And to anyone who hasn't been before, welcome and lovely to see you all here. I am going to start by asking you to be patient with us because we are live. And as you know, when things are live, things can go terribly well, or sometimes they just don't go as you expected. And those things happen. So if that happens, just bear with us. And also, as I always say, that's how you know something is live anyway. So This is the moment where I always remind people that you have no idea who I am, but my name is Luis, and I'm head of product design at YLD. I'm also I would say the host for DSL, so you probably have seen me before. I did have someone come up to me the other day and goes, "Are you that guy from DSL?" And I was like, "What? Yeah, that's me." So that was exciting, and that was my moment in claim to fame. So that happened once. That will never happen again, but I appreciate it. So I work for a company called YLD. We are a consultancy. We have someone here who's going to talk a little bit more about that. But mainly important for me is that as a host of DSL, I'm super excited about the community. So DSL, or Design System London, is basically our idea when we first set it up was start exploring design system, allowing people, give them a platform to come on stage and talk about anything design system. We do mainly design systems, but I want to say that we can talk about other products related digital stuff, but it has been. We welcome speakers of all levels. So if anyone here in the audience or on the live feed is thinking to yourself, you know what, I'm going to have a crack at that because I've got a topic that I want to talk about. And I was thinking that maybe I should do my premiere somewhere. This is the stage for you. So reach out to us. We always welcome speakers of all levels, whether you have spoken anywhere before or never before. We even have a speaker form, I think, as well, that we will be sharing as well in the live feed. And anyone who wants to speak, come up to me later. So that's kind of talking a little bit about who we are from DSL. By the way, DSL is not just me, as you obviously realized. I have a whole team of people working with me, and I think this is a great moment because I always forget to give a massive shout out to I don't even think if she's here anywhere, she might be downstairs. Her name is Victoria, and she's doing an excellent job behind the scene of making sure that all of this happens. So even if you can't hear this, Victoria, I think all of you should give her a round of applause. Thank you. This is something that she is working on so hard and is looking fantastic. And obviously, we got to thank our sponsors, etc. But we're going to hear more about them later. I want to talk a little bit about this evening's agenda. We have already opened the doors. We are doing the intros. They are happening literally right now. This is how live we are. And the food is available all evening. And as I said, it's great. You're already eating it. The drinks. There is cakes as well. Yeah, basically, no one should leave here feeling any type of hunger or wanting anything for more. So brilliant. Once we are over all this interest, we're going to kick off with our first talk, which is by one of my colleagues, James Hevey from YLD, who is going to talk to us about creating design systems, obviously. We have a second talk from Morgane. She's going to talk about how to create a design system, but maybe you haven't done it the right way. Interesting. And we have a quick break, so you can have more food and more drinks and also chat to each other. And then we have our third final speaker, Jan from Supernova, who is going to talk on how to actually do design system really, really well. So it's going to be a super interesting evening. And you know what? As if that wasn't enough, we also have, obviously, Ask Me Anything with Louis from Figma, who is basically here to answer all your Figma-related questions. And, oh, someone is calling me. This is how you know it's live. And then we're going to do a wrap up. And then for those of you who want to, we're going to go to a pub and chill out and chat and do some networking. That's basically the agenda for today. I just briefly touch on the topics, just a bigger deep dive. Blood, sweat, tears, and design systems. That's dramatic. That's going to be exciting. Someone has been putting a lot of effort into that. Oof, love it. Can't wait. We're not doing design systems properly, and that's okay. Is it? Excellent. Can't wait to hear about that from Morgane. And also, as I said before, Jan is going to talk to us about keeping design systems alive and healthy with data and user feedback. Obviously, extremely important thing. Anybody else heard that? Shaky, shaky, shaky. For those of you in the live stream, we do have a cocktail person in the room next door who's making everyone delicious drinks. So if you all of a sudden see someone giving a little bit of a ding, it's because the cocktail guy is at it. So, I know, right? Some logistics, as always. So let's start off with the code of conduct. For those of you on the live feed, you can find the code of conduct, which should be there in the link. General stuff, keep your language clean, be nice to each other, don't share inappropriate content, but do share social media stuff, obviously, because otherwise people don't know that we exist. For the live stream, you can join the conversation in the chat. You just need to log in to your account. You don't need to create an account. You don't need to pay. It's literally just using Google stuff. Social media, as I said, if you're not on social media, how do we even know that this event is happening? We got loads of different Twitter things to keep in mind. DSL Conf, Figma, obviously, and WildD are two sponsors. Hashtags, DSL, Design System London. I know, it's like the longest hashtag ever. Once you've written that, you don't have any characters left to type. So, you know, I'll leave it up to you how you want to deal with that one. But Design Systems for sure. Obviously, you can also find us on LinkedIn, on our YouTube channel, and our meetup group, which I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with because that's where most of the event starts, and that's how you find out about the next event. Okay, so you may have questions for this evening for our speakers, and that's why we have two QR codes. I know, why couldn't it just been one? Because that would have been a lot easier. But we have two. That's just the reality today. So we have one, which is question for speakers. So if you have a question for any of the speakers after they're giving a talk, we're going to have a joint Q&A session at the end. So just put your question in there, and please, can you include who the question is for? Because it's going to make it a lot easier for us when we do it. The other one is for questions for Luis from Figma, or they ask me anything. So is this the time that you go like, what are the things with Figma that really bothers me? And why can't I never get anyone to talk about that? Louis is going to regret that he agreed to this, but this is your moment. I'm looking at Louis. He's already going like, what is he talking about? But get your questions in there as well. I'm going to leave them on here for a second. You can find the links in the live feed as well for anyone watching. And we're going to come back to these QR codes a little bit later. So don't you worry, you'll get your questions in. And obviously, we have microphones as well, so if someone feels extra brave to ask your question live in the audience, everyone is like, no, don't look at me, I'm not going to do it. But if you feel like you want to, that's an opportunity too. So we are going to head over to some word from our amazing sponsors. As I said, this event cannot happen without the support. Oh, that cocktail people are at it, living for it. This is turning into a party. So our sponsors this evening, we have WildD, who is the organizer, and we have Figma. So I want to invite, first, I'm going to start by inviting somebody from Figma. I've already mentioned his name. It's Louis. He's going to come on board and say a couple of words. Here you go. It's all over to you.
Hey everybody. Hi. Like this. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming, firstly. This is actually a pretty big deal. About 18, kind of in stealth, purposefully. I joined in the industry itself, but it's amazing to have you all in the room to see some familiar, some unfamiliar, and some new faces, just to see that there is a real hunger for not necessarily Figma, but design systems in general in London. I think that we typically see most of the energy going towards San Francisco and California, particularly for this topic. But there are so many passionate and talented people in London and Europe and beyond that are really interested in talking, learning, and discussing about these topics. And I'm really excited to see where tonight goes, see what we can talk about and what we can learn from each other. And as I said, because there's so many new people here today, I'm hoping everybody can meet with each other. We can do more of these things, maybe in our office or in other offices around London as well. I'm going to be doing an AMA later, as Luis said, same name, different pronunciation, which is very helpful for all of us. And I'm a designer advocate. So a designer advocate is basically somebody who used to be a designer, but now I use that experience to help, hopefully, other people get better at things around design. I personally focus a lot on design systems and components and architecture and structure and the operations side of design. I do encourage everybody to name their layers. I know that's a controversial topic, but seriously do it, it's very important. So yeah, you can ask me whatever you want. I don't know how that's gonna go. I've never really done anything like that before, but my job is basically a permanent AMA. So hopefully it will go successfully or smoothly. You can ask whatever you want. We will be shipping tokens at some point, so I'm sure some of you have a question, when are you gonna release design tokens? They are coming, I can promise you they are, just to get that question out of the way. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Thanks all for coming, and we're really happy to have you here. Hopefully it's the first of many events in the future.
Thank you very much, Louis. So yes, as Louis said, it's Louis and Luis, same spelling, different pronunciation. Really helpful for once. he has already crossed off everyone, so I can see everyone looking at their list of questions going, okay, not need to ask about that, great. We also have our sponsor organizer, YLD, is also on site. As you can see, I'm wearing a t-shirt. But I do have someone from YLD to come and say a few words as well, so I'd like you all to welcome Jessica.
Hello. Hello, good evening. Lovely to see you all. I am Jessica. I work at YLD. I'm a client partner there. And I'm just going to take a very quick couple of minutes just to tell you a bit more about what it is we actually do. So YLD are a software engineering and project design company. We work with clients across all countries, all topic areas. We have a really diverse client base. And we partner with them to solve their problems and increase their digital and technological knowledge base. We, of course, support our clients with all kinds of everything design, UX, UI, research, and of course, working with design systems. We have loads of really great people who are in there. We're doing loads of great stuff with great clients. If you are interested in learning a bit more about the specific things we have done, we've got loads of good case studies, although just loads of people here. Clue, we're all in the YLD black merch. Feel free to ask us, approach any one of us in any of the breakouts, and we'd love to talk to you about what we do. So we are only able to do what we do because we have an amazing team. We have loads of great people that work with us. We have software engineers, data scientists, data analysts, product designers. Who have I missed? Platform, software engineers, the list is long. And those people work really closely with our clients to make sure that we are, I guess, using the benefit of our expertise and our knowledge base to always leave our clients in a better place than when we found them. So, shameless plug point, I would not be doing my job properly if I didn't tell you how great it is to work at YLD. We have offices in London, in Lisbon, in Porto. We support fully remote working, we support hybrid working. And we are always looking for great people to join us. So if you are feeling like you're ready for a new challenge, if you have a friend who's feeling like they're ready for a new challenge, again, please do just find somebody in a black YLD jumper, and we would love to talk to you about what it's like to work at YLD. Of course, you can look at our website, all our vacancies are there. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. We are available on all channels, so please do get in touch. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And like I say, anyone you see in a black jumper, come and say hi. We're here to chat, and we are so passionate and love to talk about what we do. So yeah, please do come and say hi. I think you probably want to get to the good stuff now. So I'm going to leave. It's been lovely to chat to you. Thank you. Come find us and enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to both Louis and Jessica, and obviously thank you very much to Figma and to YLD for making sure that these events can happen. So, this is when I need to do my face ID. I knew this having idea. I thought it would be a really good setup for me to have my iPad ready, and then I was like, oh my God, am I going to be one of those people who just fall down and try to get my face in it? But don't worry, I'm in, it's all good. So I want to move over a little bit to the talks. So while you guys take this in, before we look at what's happening this time, I want to look a little bit at what happened last time. So last time we had 6 speakers who gave us some really great talks. There was about design system, the what, the why, and the how. They were talking about, we had Catherine and Jana talking about how they built a design system at Candy. We had Baby Step to the Utopian Dream by Dan Donald, design advocate Zero Height. And we had line multi-theme design, token across design and code. That was a long one, by Luke, product designer at News UK. So I think we have some News UK people here in the house. Is that true? We do indeed, yeah, get some waves, fantastic. By Luke and Marco, both from News UK. And we had Design System for Small Organizations by Dan Cork. So those were fantastic talks. And for those of you who missed those and think like, damn it, why didn't I not see that? Do you know what? You can, because they're all on our YouTube channel. So you see how I'm going to be plugging things, because that's what I do. I plug things all evening. So basically, you can go onto YouTube channel and you can see all the talks from previous events that we had. But anyway, this talks for this evening, as I said before, blood, sweat, and tears, we are doing design system properly, and that's okay, or are we not? Keep the design system alive and healthy. These are the talks, and we are going to get straight into them now. I think I haven't forgotten anything. We talked about logistics. Here are the codes again, sorry, the QR codes again for questions. And I think at this point, it's probably when I should say it is time to let our first speaker onto the stage. And the first speaker today is James. James, the digital stage is all yours. The rest of you, just like take 2 minutes to pretend like you're really busy, because we're going to do a really easy, quick handover. No one's going to notice anything.
I've seen this.
See how quick it is. So quick. Thank you.
Oh, don't judge. You all do it. Okay, all ready? Yeah, hello everybody, and welcome to my talk, Blood, Sweat, Tears, and Design Systems. It is a slightly ominous title, as Luis already alluded to, but it will make sense later on, I promise. First things first though, my name is James, and I'm a product designer at the tech consultancy Wildy. For those of you who are still unfamiliar with Wildy, we specialize in both software engineering and digital product design consultancy. And because of this, we've actually long been advocates of design systems. They're something we frequently recommend to our clients and actually help our clients to establish, deliver, and maintain. In fact, Wildy's advocacy for design systems ultimately led to the creation of the Design Systems London conference, which in turn has spawned this event. And it's been amazing to see how DSL has grown to become such a voice within the community. So massive thank you to everyone who's contributed to that. Now, when I joined Wildy back in 2017, I didn't know the first thing about design systems. I'd come from a much more traditional graphic and digital design background, and I was still just trying to find my feet within the discipline of digital product design. But fast forward to 2022, and I've spent the last 4 or 5 years working fairly extensively with design systems. And gradually, I've progressed to the point where I've been able to lead the creation of several design systems for some of Wildy's clients. Now, it's been a long and humbling journey to go from a complete novice to something of a veteran. Lots of lessons have been learned, and there are still lots of lessons to be learned, if I'm honest. So today I want to look back at my journey working with design systems, and I particularly want to focus on the different questions, struggles, and milestones that I've experienced. So hopefully this talk will be useful to any designers out there who are about to embark on their own journey with design systems. So I want to start by taking you all back to 2017. Wasn't a great year, so sorry about that. But it is where my design systems journey begins. Now, as I've said, when I joined Wildy, I didn't know anything about design systems. I pretty much just liked making UI. But around 2017, design systems began to make their way into the mainstream tech consciousness, and Wildy began to work on more and more projects that involved them in one form or another. And so design systems quickly became a subject of great interest to me due to their relationship with UI. And I spent my first few weeks at Wildy trawling through various articles, tutorials, and other people's sketch files, as was the fashion back then, just trying to get a better idea of what makes a design system. And one of the first problems I encountered was that design systems, as we know them within digital product design, are a fairly new discipline. And because of this, there's still a lot of ambiguity around them. There are certain things we can all agree should go into a design system and that make a design system, but there's equally a lot of things that are unclear. And a lot of this ambiguity revolves around the practical side of making a design system. So the real nuts and bolts stuff, really, of how you as a designer should go about establishing one. For instance, how should you organize your design files? How should you structure your components? What naming conventions should you use? How and what should you document? And how can you ensure consistent design decisions throughout? And all these unknowns mean it can be tempting to assume there's a very set way of creating a design system and to simply copy what has already been established by the likes of Polaris or Material Design or whoever. when in reality, design systems are not a one-size-fits-all solution. They each have their own unique quirks and idiosyncrasies, just as every product and organization does. So it's far more important that your design system reflects these nuances and aligns to the unique needs of your product and organization, rather than you just blindly following a big-name design system. Now, my first experience of actually working with design systems came a few months into my time at Wildy, when I was able to join a design systems-focused project and work under the tutelage of a more senior product designer. Shout out to Antonis if you're watching. And during my time on this project, I initially started out as a bit of a design system underling, kind of slaving away on our collective design files and very much learning on the job. But this gave me really valuable insights about things like different contribution processes and different ownership structures, including our team's transition from a centralized team to a more federated style approach. It helped me learn about things like grid systems and baseline grids to give underlying visual structure to components and to screens. And generally, it just helped me forge stronger relationships with engineers through a shared language and shared tools such as InVision and Storybook. Now, eventually that project wrapped, and no, it didn't actually wrap. It progressed, and I actually assumed full design ownership of the design system without any real issues. And this was mainly due to the fact that I'd been so hands-on with the design system for so long that I had a really solid understanding of its different quirks and idiosyncrasies. And this understanding was vital for when I gradually handed over the design system to the client's internal designers and engineers. Now, eventually, that project wrapped, and various clients and months passed until I reached the next big milestone of my design systems journey in 2020. Again, sorry for taking you all back there. But this time, the project was a bit more intimidating, and it really forced me out of my comfort zone. So it involved me leading the establishment of a cross-platform design system from scratch, which was the first time that I'd led on a project of this size from the outset. And it was a very different experience being responsible for the underlying foundations and structure of things like style guides and component libraries, rather than having them already laid out for me. On top of this, the client actually liked to work with Figma, which I'd never used until that point. So all in all, I was doing a lot of things for the first time. And that meant this project posed a number of new questions and considerations for me. Now, these questions are not necessarily going to blow your mind with their complexity, but they are a true reflection of some of the unknowns that you face when you're first establishing a design system in Figma. So some of the key questions I had were as follows. Firstly, what's the best file structure to adopt? And when I say file structure, I mean how should you organize your design system files so that it's easy for designers and engineers and any other stakeholder to find components, foundational elements, or any other documentation? How should you manage different cross-platform considerations and your components? So different platforms obviously have different interactions that require different components. It could be web and app, or iOS and Android, whatever. But what can you do to easily distinguish one platform set of components from another platform set of components? How can you construct highly flexible components? So as designers, we all know that things change, particularly visuals. It could be because of user feedback, or as was the case on this project, because of a larger company rebrand. But is there an optimum way that you can actually construct your components so that you can make these kind of sweeping visual changes if needed? What's the best way of implementing and communicating atomic principles? So in particular, ensuring the relationship between new components and existing components is explicitly clear to both designers and engineers. What's the best way of managing variants in Figma? So variants are a great time and space saver, but they're also one more thing that needs to be managed so you don't end up with multiple instances of the same variant type. And this is particularly relevant if you're planning on actually replicating your Figma variant namings in something like Storybook. And finally, how can you ensure a consistent visual language? So because of the granular nature of design systems, it can sometimes be tricky to know if you're actually establishing a visual language that's consistent and replicable. Ultimately, you don't want to be in a situation where you start putting screens together and it just looks like a total Frankenstein. So all these questions actually came up during this project, and I tried my best to answer them as I saw fit, but sometimes as a consultant, and particularly as a more junior consultant, which I was back then, it can be hard to reconcile the fact that there are things that you don't know, or that you may need to explore further. Now again, months passed and the project wrapped, and again, thankfully, I was able to hand over the design system without any real issues, but I still had this nagging feeling that I needed to explore some of these questions a bit more thoroughly. So I thought, I know, I'll create my own design system, or at least the style guide and component library parts, and it'll only be accessible to me so I can just have a right good mess around and try and come up with some answers to these questions. So I started to work on what would become known solely to me as supple UI. Now, supple UI was fairly rudimental. You can see some screens that have been assembled using it here, but it did allow me to start stress testing my ideas and come up with some answers. For instance, my preferred Figma file structure was to have one library file that basically had all the different foundational elements, components, and other miscellaneous aspects on their own individual pages, as you can see in the sidebar. I found that it just made everything a lot clearer and easier to locate with, just more obvious separation. In the event, though, that I did have to manage different cross-platform considerations, I would create separate files for each platform's components, but use one overarching style guide file. To ensure the highest level of flexibility in my components, I constructed them all using a parent or master component, which I then branched off of. And this basically meant that if I wanted to make changes to something like the text size or paddings or corner radiuses, I just needed to make them to the master UI component, and it would cascade down throughout all instances of the same component. When I was implementing atomic design principles, I would always start by trying to group relevant atoms and molecules together as variants, if appropriate. So for example, things like your radio select icon with your radio button. The accessibility isn't as bad as it looks on that screen. I found that organisms usually warranted being their own separate component, however. And when I actually did nest different components within one another, I would actually include a reference that linked to the existing component in Figma. So there was a really clear lineage that both designers and engineers could follow. For variants, I made sure to stick to and document consistent naming conventions, and this meant I obviously didn't repeat or contradict myself, and I actually wound up creating a separate terminology section in Figma that documented all the different naming conventions, so things for sizing, for variants, for layer names. And when it came to ensuring consistency in visual language, obviously things like color and type played a huge part, but one of the most important visual elements to consider in a design system is obviously space, both the space between and within your components. Now, systemizing the space between your components is fairly common and highly recommended, but what maybe doesn't get talked about as much is systemizing the space within your components, effectively your paddings. Because this is a great way of actually maintaining consistent proportions across your UI, particularly when used in conjunction with a grid system. So whether that's 4-point, 6-point, 8-point, or whatever your point of choice. So around the same time that I was doing all this experimentation with supple UI, at Wildy we found that we kept getting projects that involved some form of design system. And it was quickly becoming apparent that across these different projects, we were largely rebuilding a lot of the same foundational elements, with most of this repetition simply involving best practice considerations. And gradually, the idea of starting from scratch each time became a real bottleneck. There was a very clear instance where I was working with another product designer, and he was ready to start doing some lo-fi prototyping in Figma, and I was still assembling the first batch of UI components, so he basically just had to wait for me. So we couldn't help but think, wouldn't it be great to have some basic components and foundations ready to hand to use as a starting point to design from? Which brings me back to this quote from about 13 minutes ago by me. You might recall that I confidently stated that design systems are not a one-size-fits-all solution and that they each have their own unique quirks and idiosyncrasies, just as every product and organization does. Now, the reason I bring this quote up is because it may occur to you that implementing pre-established components and foundations sounds like it contradicts my point about design systems being unique. So let me explain. Because at this stage, we didn't actually really need a fully fledged design system. What we needed as designers was a highly malleable style guide and component library that had all of our best practices built in and that would ultimately serve as the backbone to any future design systems work at Wildy. So with this in mind, the design team at Wildy got together and thought, we know, we'll create our own design system, or at least the style guide and component library parts. Now, this was a thought process I was very familiar with, and so I actually volunteered to lead the establishment of this white label design system. I'm doing air quotes because it's not a true design system yet. So at this point, you might be thinking that I'd surely use the work that I'd already done on supple UI as a starting point. but you'd actually be wrong. And the reason for that was that I'd never expected anybody else would ever use supple UI, so it was full of my own unchecked quirks and idiosyncrasies. And this presented a bit of an issue because at Wildy we wanted to ensure that whatever we created could be shared with the wider community. So rather than subject the wider community to my organized chaos, I decided to put supple UI on ice and ironically start again from scratch. Now at this stage you could argue, why start from scratch? Why not just repurpose an existing design system file from the Figma community or an existing component library like Chakra UI? And while we did consider this, we actually felt that not having full authorship could potentially really hinder us. For example, if something went wrong or was questioned by a client, we wouldn't automatically have the answers because we hadn't created the original work. And also, ultimately, we wanted whatever we created to actually reflect Wildy's quirks and idiosyncrasies. And additionally, we found that most design system files in the Figma community are fairly light on in-depth documentation and, crucially, the rationale of the design decisions that have been taken within them. Now, this is understandable, partly because this documentation sometimes lives elsewhere, but also because who likes writing documentation? But we did feel it was really important to give clear context to any design decisions that we made in our white label design system, so that other designers would be able to understand the how and the why of our decisions and subsequently make changes to them. So we're now in 2022. I hope it's been an all right year for everybody, which brings me to the most recent milestone of my design systems journey, which is the early stages work for Wildy's white label design system, which is a bit of a mouthful of a name, so it's come to be known internally as Mothership. And the ultimate aim of Mothership is actually twofold. Firstly, it's to create a robust platform for all future Wildy design systems work to be built on top of. And secondly, it's to actually educate and inform any designers out there who might be starting out on their own journey with design systems. Effectively, it contains all the information and knowledge that I've learned throughout my journey that I wish somebody just told me at the start of it. So Mothership's only been in production for a few months now, but it is starting to take shape. Our current foundations that we've got are spacing scales, spacing systems, typography styles, typography scales, grids, space colors, semantic colors, shadows and effects, and some tokenization. And we've even been able to start creating some core components as well, things like buttons and text inputs. And as it stands, we're just short of releasing a V1 of Mothership into the Figma community. Our aim would be to release that early next year. Not sure I wanted to commit to that on film, but I think I just have. And ultimately, beyond that, we want to continue to actually expand Mothership to reach outside of Figma, get it set up in platforms like Zero Height or Supernova, and really develop it as this educational and informative tool. Potentially, we might even get our Wildy engineers involved and start realizing it within code so we can take it one step closer to becoming a truer design system. So just before I conclude this talk, I do have some closing comments, and they are mainly for myself back in 2017, so apologies if they're a bit personal. I said at the start that it had been a long and humbling journey, and to anybody starting out on that journey, I know it can seem impossible. It's very easy to look at other people's design systems work and think, I'll never be able to do that, it's too vast, it's too complicated, I don't understand, because those are all thoughts I've had throughout my journey. And actually, nearly everybody I've ever spoken to about design systems also seems to have had these thoughts at one stage or another. So it is really important to remember that you're not alone in having some of these thoughts and struggles. We're all on the same journey, we're just on different tracks. There is a fantastic design systems community out there who will support you. And a lot of the struggles that we do go through with design systems go unseen because we don't share them, but that doesn't mean they don't happen to all of us. So keep going. Design systems do demand a lot of blood and sweat and tears, but if you stick with them, you will get there. Thank you very much for listening. If you're interested in the progress of Mothership, follow either myself or Wildy for updates. Cheers.
Let me see if this works. Oh, no, it's not going to work. Oh, it is. This is why we're kind of just going to go in and... Oh, you can't hear me? It's just me hearing myself. Never should have switched off the microphone. Can you hear me now? Hear me now. People are still shaking their heads. Probably don't have that much interesting to say anyway. What about now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, cool. So, I'm just going to talk louder because that's what people normally do when they think that nobody can understand them. So I'm just going to speak louder. Can you hear me at the back? Brilliant, awesome. So I'm not going to let James go off stage because James has come to visit us from far, a land far, far away. It's not that far, it's like 2 hours away on the train. But he needs to get back, so he won't be able to join the QA. So here we go. Thank you. Oh, wow, what a difference. My throat is going to thank that tomorrow. Thank you. If anybody has any questions for James, this is the moment to ask any questions. Do we have any questions for James before he rushes off on a train about creating? Yes, we have a question right here. Go on. I'm going to come up and here you go.
Hey, you mentioned that one of the distinct features about this like open source design systems that you would find on the Figma community, for instance, is that it's really hard to understand all the decisions and the rationale behind the decisions that have been made. So how would you solve that for your open source design system?
Oh yeah, I don't need a mic, do I? So I think from our perspective, it's more about, obviously there are thousands of articles that will tell you why certain design decisions have been made. I think for us, it's about putting it in a context of being in a Figma file where you can actually read it, understand what it is, and then actually action it and do it kind of in the file. So I still think it's fundamentally the same thing as it being written down and in the file. But I think setting it up almost like a tutorial that's kind of ready and encourage the users to actually change it. Yeah, that's probably how we'd do it.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions? I have a question. There we go. I'm ready. Yes, we have a question here. Actually, I'm going to walk over here, hand the microphone over. Here you go, my fine gentleman.
Thank you. Just wondered if you had any tips on ways to, or the best ways to get feedback from people on the design system. Like if people are using it and they want to suggest changes, how do you kind of gather that information and that feedback and action it?
That's an excellent question, which, as we haven't released it yet, I couldn't really give you a proper answer to. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it's something that we'll be constantly seeking feedback on. I don't have a good answer to that, to be honest.
So we have somebody else has an answer on that, I believe. Go for it. Okay, so hold that question for later. He's going to answer it afterwards. So we actually, for those of you who are super interested in understanding, is your design system giving you the result you need, and how do I understand this? There was a talk about this at a DSL conference not too far away on a YouTube channel from where you are. So again, plug in the YouTube channel, go back. I think we actually have the speaker in the audience, do we? Did you not talk about metrics? Oh, yeah, you, yeah, Ellis, yeah. Oh, that old talk. Oh, yeah, I remember that. So that was a great talk. Check that out. That's probably, I mean... I actually have one question. So you mentioned that we might potentially get engineers involved. How come we don't have engineers involved from the beginning when we set it up?
Because it initially came about very much from a design need. And the kind of repetition of what we were doing in a lot of clients in terms of just putting in the same foundations over and over again, and it just meant that it slowed down the entire engagement, really, at least at the start. So from our perspective, it was just done almost in isolation from the design team of we need just a quicker way of doing this. Like, it's still going to be the same thing that we ultimately supply at the end to engineers for them to actually build. But we just need that kind of kickstart, basically. So, yeah, obviously, we will get them involved at some stage. It's just finding the right moment to get them involved.
Excellent. So for any Wildy engineers in the audience who want to get involved, or if you're watching online, because I'm sure you all are, let's get involved. We'll be talking about that in the next couple of weeks. James, I'm going to let you go here because we got to crack on, but thank you so much, and have a safe journey back on the train. It's trains in the UK, so who knows? Hopefully you're there before midnight. Thank you so much for coming, James. Thank you, James. This is an applaud. You are excused. It is time for us to welcome our second speaker straight on to the stage. We got Morgane. Are you ready? No, it's not you, actually. It's Jan. Oh, hang on. It is you. Oh, do you know what it is? She's not ready. That's the problem. I'm sitting here thinking, do you know what? Tonight's going to be smooth. We're going to have no problem. We have no live codes. We have no live feed. It's always an issue. However, in the meantime, have we had anyone online from anywhere else outside of the UK? This is what I do. Check me out, guys. Got a fake. There we go. Works every time. We are going to check where people are from on the live feed. So I know for a fact that we have people from the UK because I've already had that. Let's see where else do we have people from. Oh, we have comments. We have thumbs up. Hi, everyone. Germany, fantastic. That's brilliant. Brazil, oh, brilliant. Portugal, excellent. Okay, so for anyone on the live feed, keep telling us where you're coming from. In the live audience, do we have anyone who actually doesn't live in London, who has traveled from another land far, far away? Oh, yes. Okay. Where are we coming from over here? Berlin. Oh, yes. I hear you guys are just kind of came on holiday and saw this and was like, this is what happens in London tonight. You guys got good radar. Well done. Where are you coming from? Yes? Sorry? Hertfordshire. That's just not just Hertfordshire. That's a lovely place. Excellent. I think we had someone else as well. Oh, Czech Republic. That's a far travel. Well done. Excellent. Very exciting. I am casting an eye over here thinking, oh, is it going to happen? There we go. We have speaker ready. Can you see how smooth these handovers are? It's like you can barely notice them. Just me on stage. Next thing you blink, someone else is here. The stage is all yours.
That's better? Oh yeah. Have a dedicated team and a dedicated manager. And of course, open source it. So I'm here to say that our design system has survived 8 years with none of that. Yes, it's possible. It has survived 8 years, 3 technical upgrades, 2 design tool migration, and we tick none of those boxes. Actually, what I'm here to share today is how we ended up doing things that work for us. So not necessarily the appropriate things for design system and what we learned along the way. So before I dive into all this, I just want to share a bit of context and the things we do, because I work at Societe Generale in the corporate and investment banking division. So all services are for corporates and financial institutions. So there are typically things like this. So quite packed interfaces. So this is a trading tool. Ooh, the ratio is, the contrast is very bad, sorry. Hope it's better for people online. So trading tools to trade foreign exchange. So as you can see here, we can trade quite advanced financial instruments, and people can monitor multiple currency pairs at the same time. We also have things like this, which is basically analytics, but for financial markets. And today, our platform has about 130 services and products, and they all use the same design system. It's not been easy. I mean, it's been far from easy. And I'm going to share a few things that we heard, and maybe that will sound familiar. People saying things like, no, we're unique. My project, we move too fast. Also, you know, I prefer blue, not red. And our users, well, they're different than the rest of the internet, I guess. And also, why should I check my work with them? And anyway, who are you? So yeah. feeling the pain here. Yeah, so that's the story today. And I think what worked first can be bucketed into 3 ideas. So how to survive 8 years, how we had to adapt for adoption, embed our organizational goals into our design system, and change along the way. So we'll start with adoption, which is the thing that we all need to succeed in, right? As people who do design systems. Usually people who start on their design system journey, what they try to do is brainstorm about naming. And I get it. Naming is great because it gives you an identity. It's great for branding. It attracts people. You can hire with that. And let's be honest, who doesn't like swag? But I dare to say that there's another side of the coin, because if you have identity, yeah, great animation. You have identity, that means you're also excluding people. If you have branding, that means you want to set yourself apart from the rest of the organization. And swag is great, but it's an artifact. You can take the swag and still not use the design system. So really first, it was really not about design system as a tool. We really wanted people to understand design system as a way of working. It's about reusing assets, guidelines, design assets, code, all the blah, blah. But most essentially, it's for people who use the design systems to understand that they are part of the bigger whole and that we're all connected. So really what we say is we have a thing that is the design system, but that's just how we work now. And the how we work is super important. Today, our design system is actually called our company name design system, so Societe Generale Design System, HDS. And I dare say that you can't be against it. It has the company name in it. You can't be against your company, right? And it's about the same as you can't really be against a function like HR, and we are not giving HR a fancy name, I think. So yeah, that's how we had to give up having a cool name. Sometimes I still call it a web toolkit for people to understand, so yeah. But I think the biggest mistake we do when managing up stakeholders is failing to articulate what's in it for them, because we're kind of prisoner of a kind of expert mindset. I'm going to illustrate that with sharing how we actually got buy-in to work more than 3 months on something we call adaptive colors. So in 2019, when we introduced dark theme, we started to realize that due to the nature of our interfaces, so you've seen we have, sometimes it gets intense, we have up to 4 levels of hierarchy, it was really easy to introduce accessibility issues because of the color combination. And we had to find a way to fix that sustainably, and we couldn't really go on each project to tell them to check the colors. This was hard to get prioritized, honestly, because there's always so much to do, right? Till the day I saw something in my inbox, which is something like this. Basically, a very upset salesperson sent an email complaining that the client couldn't see the price of a $1 million trade or something. And I saw this email and screenshot. And that screenshot ended up in every roadmap, every presentation. I don't even think I had to mention accessibility issue, because I said, look, clients, they can't see prices, they can't trade. We need to fix that system at the system level. And that's how we ended up implementing this, which is today we have a set of colors that adapt. So I'm just going to walk you through this slide because it's a bit hard to read. But basically, using warning here as an example, the color will adapt its hue and lightness depending on the type of element it is. Is it a background color? Is it like a text color? Depending on its properties, how big is the text, as you can see on the side, and on which background it is. And this has been fully automated in SCSS because we didn't want people to refer to usage guidelines because that was going to be too intense for 4 levels of hierarchies. And this is also essentially why we don't have tokens as of today, because we really wanted to keep it easy for people to manage colors, both for designers and developers. Yeah, so essentially this is how we got buy-in, all thanks to a very upset salesperson, which I don't think is aware of this story. I'll tell him one day. So yeah, whether it's about naming your thing or getting buy-in, adapt to get adoption. So next up, which is how do we embed our organization's goal into our design system? I really feel that sometimes we have subcultures in a company, and we tend to, obviously it's more comfortable to stay in a little tech bubble, a little design system bubble. But really, every interaction we have with our stakeholders is really an opportunity to articulate our value, align with their goals and the organization's goal. It's a bit of a mouthful, so I'll explain. Ta-da, of course, we have buttons in our design system, like everyone, but I think buttons really don't get people excited. So instead, we are Peng. We have to deal with a lot of data, or users need to deal with a lot of data. So actually, we have a lot of pickers in our design system. And that gets people to understand, because the example we say is like when we want to select a client in any other tool, we want the experience of selecting a client to be the same, because it used to be implemented completely differently before we had a design system and the platform. So that really gets people to understand the value of using components and patterns. And when we started to have components and patterns, what we ended up doing is having also, introducing business patterns, which are reusable patterns for business use cases. I'm going to give an example next, which is something called the 4i check. So anyone has heard about 4i check before? No, nobody? Yeah. Hello, Henry. Thank you for raising your hand. So 4i check is something used a lot in finance, and I guess any tool that have to deal with big transactions. It's something that allows, when you have a sensitive process, to have another pair of eyes, so 4 eyes, yes, to check an action. And for this pattern to work, so again, think big transactions, something that gone wrong would be very bad. I'm not going to name anything here. So for this pattern to work, you have to show risky areas of created content. You have to highlight the errors, potential errors raised by people previously in the chain, and allows the current user to input decision. So we had the example of a service who needed a 4i check, and we've designed it this way. So on the left, you have the data. On the right, you have the warnings. And at the bottom, the action area. And when another service also needed a 4i check, well, we took it. Not literally like this, but that's how I try to present it to you today. And then, poof, we put it into the new service. Obviously here, this is more like a visual way of seeing things, because the patterns also embed things like considering who should provide the 4i check. Is it your colleagues, your manager, someone else, a third party? But really here, the idea is to be able to leverage on things that we've validated previously in another service where we've done the user research and the testing, and basically building on the knowledge of things that works. So said differently, we are trying to reuse, curate, and evolve patterns to amplify what works. But this is a very design system way of saying things. I am not going to my boss and saying, maybe he'll understand it. I'm not sure that will get his attention. So another angle of kind of conveying the same thing is more like reducing cost, reducing entropy, and reducing time to market. I can tell you that in the current context in my company, all the top-level executives really care about cost, entropy, and time to market. And I think I can even share a slide that we did to present them a study where we really try to, on a new project, to quantify the amount of patterns, or business patterns that we used on another service. So it looked like this. So the table is a bit small, so it's more for you to take a picture or a screenshot if you ever wanted to try to do the same study at home, at your company. But basically, when we did this study, we realized that 80% of the estimated design workload could be reused from other product, which includes the research, the prototyping, specifications, and testing. At this point, you could argue, should business patterns be part of a design system? Honestly, I don't know, but what I know is it gets people's buy-in, interest, and support from top execs, so we take it. Finally, changing along the way. Actually, I'd like you to consider, when's the last time you changed your mind about something you do at work? I'm not going to ask, don't worry. Because we had to scale. I think 2016, we had 10 products. This year, we have 130. And so obviously, we had to change and scale and change the way we operate design system. And well, actually, when I say we had to change, it's not true. It's like we were forced to change. As you can see from this nice collage from Henry, actually, over there, of all the type of requests and suggestions and ideas we would get on design system. And yeah, it's beautiful collage, but not sustainable. As Amy Hube, who's here today, said in a recent conference on design system dogma, by learning how to change design system, we create design system that can change. And I feel today is so true. And when we talk about changing, it's not just the content, it's also how we operate things. If I take the example of our governance, we changed it so many times, actually. When we started the design system journey in 2014, the design team was super small. We were like 5, maybe. So it was very easy to take decisions. But as the team grew, people started to complain that the meetings were too long and was not interesting. So we moved in 2017 into something we call the benevolent dictatorship, where a few selected would decide, gather, and decide for everyone. That worked well until, guess what? People started complaining again that this time they felt that they were not in the loop, kind of not even knowing what was happening anymore. So we changed into what I call decentralized workforce, which is we were like, okay, so this time we're going to use GitHub and InVision back then. We name-dropped a lot of design tools today to basically document and make decisions asynchronously, so through tickets. But soon enough, people started complaining again. I think complaining is a way to change, honestly, because they were like too much to catch on, and it's just diluted this sense of responsibility that people were saying they were lacking the vision, and it was so hard to justify the work on system compared to other projects. So we changed again. To this day, we're still on this setup. I don't know for how long, but it works. We formed what we call a design system council. So it's not a team because we didn't want it to, again, for people to feel isolated and left out. But what we clarified, if you want to work on design system, then you have to be available. And we clarified a set of criteria in terms of availability and what does it mean to be in the system, in the council. And actually, this also allowed us to have political peace, because people who are in the council need to have their hands into the design system. So that is kind of fending off opinions for above, I guess. Yeah, and so essentially, today this is how we operate. And that really reminds me of the ship of Theseus, but a design system edition. So I don't know if everyone's aware of this, but this ship, but it's a thought experiment, which is if you have a ship and you change every single part of this ship, at which point does it start to become a new ship? And for a design system, it's kind of the same. So after 8 years, we've changed 3 times the tech library, twice the design tool, or design tool, 4 times the design system governance. Is it still like the same design system? But at the end of the day, I would argue that we don't always need to evolve by rebooting or building new ships. Sometimes we just need to learn how to evolve with the current ship. So maybe one thought I would like to leave you with today is do what works for you and not necessarily what you read and hear from the community. Do what works for you to get adoption in your context, even if it means that you won't get a sexy name. Do what works for you to align with your organization goals, such as when we had to invest on business patterns and put our design system forward as a way to reduce costs. And do what works for you at this very specific moment of your journey. Again, we changed 4 times. Who knows, maybe tomorrow we'll have design tokens, I don't know. But for the moment, it works for us. So yeah, if you want to read up more about some of the stories that I highlighted tonight, we have a Medium blog that I think has really interesting content, so you should definitely check it out. Totally biased. And as for me, you can find me on Twitter, Medium, and LinkedIn. I am Morgane Peng, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I was too scared to switch off the microphone this time, so I just kept it on. Thank you so much. That was amazing. You're going to be coming back, joining us for the Q&A. Yes. Brilliant. In the meantime, I am going to do a very smooth handover again. I'm going to plug my laptop back in so everybody can get the QR code. If you have questions for Morgane or for our final speaker that's going to come back to us after the break, oh, this is going so well. You can all see how smooth this all is. Then please do use the Slido link. Ta-da. Ta-da. Okay, it's going to happen. Don't worry. Oh, there we go. There it is. So, yeah, please use the QR codes, both for our upcoming MAA with Louis and obviously for our Q&A with our two speakers. So, it's time for us to take a very quick break. Where are we timing? Oh, we're doing very well, actually. So, we're going to take about 10 minutes or so. That should be enough for you to all get it well. Don't worry, get your drinks, come back, go to the bathroom, etc. We'll see where we are, about 10 to 15 minutes, and we'll see you back here. Thank you so much. Hello, hello. Okay. Oh, this one definitely is working. You can all hear me now. Okay, so we are about to kick off again. We're just going to wait for a few more people coming in from the food and drink area and take their seats. I don't blame you. The drinks are great and the food is delicious, so by all means. Okay, so I think we are ready to kick off. We are going to move ahead with our third speaker for the evening. And as you can see already, the topic is keeping design systems alive. By the way, I'm living for this little sort of meme. It's very, very on point. Without further ado, I'm going to welcome the speaker himself. Oh. Ooh. There we go. I think we're just getting mixed up.
Are we ready? Okay, excellent. So, please welcome Jan.
Is it better now? Yes. Perfect. Hello, everyone. So today I would like to speak about keeping design systems healthy and alive, and how we can use and what data and what research we can use to make that happen. Short info about me: I'm Jan. I'm from Prague, Czech Republic. I work as a director of design at Supernova. And if you don't know Supernova, we are a tool that you can use for documenting, maintaining, managing, and also automating design system. But I won't be speaking about Supernova today. What I want to speak today is very much related to this quote. And I think we all know this quote: design system is not a project, it's a product serving products. And this part is important. We can also visualize it as this. We have a design system which has some parts. They do something. The yellow box is basically like a visualization of a product, and other products are using it. But what's important to know is that those products are probably not same. They may be different, they can look differently, they can be older, they can be newer, and they definitely are not static. They also change, they evolve, the same as our design system should evolve. Some products that are using design system are growing, adding new features, having new requests from a design system. Some design systems are going through rebranding because companies want to make them more modernized, or they are getting feedback that they are too old. New products can be emerging in the company. They suddenly need a design system to happen. It can be another public product, some experiment. It can be also another internal product, for example, for customer support or something similar. And some products just die or are discontinued. That happens as well. They may not be profitable. Internal system may not be needed anymore, and so company decides to kill them. And this is called product lifecycle. Very shortly, there is some introduction of the product, then they grow, then they are in the phase of maturity, and then they may die through decline phase, or we can figure out how we keep them in maturity or how we make them grow more. That's the extension purple part. And because design system is a product, it also is affected by product life cycle. And when we introduce a design system in a company, it's young, it's immature, but it's helpful, and we eventually get some traction, and we will start growing. We will get into maturity where everyone is kind of excited and using design system, adoption is high, and then sometimes it happens that they start to go to decline. What are some signals of design system decline? I will skip first three parts for now. Many bugs. People are reporting bugs. Design system is not reliable anymore. Or we are releasing breaking changes, so people are confused and annoyed by design system because it actually creates more work for them. We may have outdated components, outdated documentation. We can be slow in supporting features of design system, and by that, blocking product teams in delivery. And we are always late. People will ask us, hey, do you have drop down? Yes, we will have it in 2 months. So what happens? New design systems will start emerging, new component libraries will start emerging which are disconnected from the main design system. Product teams keep not using a system because it's not helpful, it's adding more work for them. And of course, that adds to the design and technical debt, and eventually we will lose executive support for that design system, because if it's not helpful, why should companies support it? People start leaving, they are annoyed by the work they are doing, and company decides not to replace people in original design system team. But what I would like to talk about data that we can track, we can measure, and about research we can do is specifically for those two phases, or for the goals of making a design system mature as long as possible and extend the design system with whatever new needs company may need. And when I was thinking how to structure this talk, I kind of realized that it's about two things. Three, but I have like two here. One is observability, and second is research and continuous discovery. When I say observability, I mean anything that helps us to understand what works and what not. And I would like to speak about three sections: adoption, system status, and satisfaction. Let's go to adoption. This is from our work at Product Board. This is Looker. It's a BI tool for dashboards and data work. And what we did, we were looking for a solution that will help us to scan code base for components that we use. We just used a React scanner, which is an open source tool for React, and we asked our data team to help us to visualize those data. So we suddenly got some nice charts we can use, and we can also share with stakeholders, and with the company. And just looking at this, we could describe what is happening here. The blue chart which goes up is usage of design system components. It's not about the absolute numbers here, it's about the trend here. Because we can say to the company, more product teams are using our components, which means we are saving more of their time. The section on the bottom with the charts is about which components is most used and which not. And this is important mostly for us as a design system maintainers, because we know to which components to invest and which we can just keep as is. Because some components are not that important. There are more things. The green and red on the right, it's adoption of our icon set. At one point, we decided to migrate to a new icon set, but all products still use the old one. So we need to somehow visualize this as a problem, because this is basically a technical debt in our application. But honestly, this was not important for any stakeholders, to be fair. This was important mostly for us and for our managers, but not for their managers. It was too granular for them. All what they wanted to see was this. Sorry for the contrast. Basically, a colored overlay over the existing actual app, which is saying this is from design system, this is not. Just from this, they knew what is the adoption in each section. And this was enough for them. This was enough trigger for them to start pushing other teams. Hey, you should be adopting things, because your domain, your product team is owning something here, and it's not using things, and it's blocking us from our goals we want to achieve. There is a bit more, but I recommend going to check this article. This is from my colleague Philip. He wrote an article about how we measured it, what were some tooling we used, and how it helped us. So more details can be found there. I will also share a link to all the resources that I will mention, and a few more at the end of the talk. I also like to look into the community, and this is from an article from Steve Dennis, I think, yes, from Onfido. And they are also looking Looker, but what they also do, they are tracking design token adoption. And there's a lots of graphs there, but what I like here the most is the middle one, because the vertical one, because there is something at least 80%, which calls target. And just this one thing is setting expectations that 100% is not a target, not right now, which is an important thing, because I don't know if you've ever got this question, but I've got the question many times in my career: when will we reach 100% adoption? And I think this is something we need to break as thinking. It will never happen, and I think this chart is kind of saying this is not even our goal. The same thing we can see also on this chart from Polaris, from Shopify team. On the right, they have the 90% adoption of the admin using Polaris. They also have the overlay thing, so I guess they need to communicate how it actually is in the real product. But what I like here the most is actually this part. Not just they are using which components are used and which properties are used, but also the last red chart, which components are overridden and extended. And this is important, because just by looking at this, I can see that card could do probably more, because people have a need to override what it does. So I can go to check what those 43 overrides are, and I can systemize it and bring this back to the system and scale it to the rest of the company. Because some of those overrides can actually be the same, just done by different people. Let's talk about status quickly. This is a different one. It's way more manual, at least for us it was, and it's about tracking status for implementations of our design system components, mostly components and patterns. When I started at product board, the goal from engineering management was you cannot start design system on the as a greenfield project. It needs to use things that already exist, because there are many things, they may not be systemized, but we have plenty of things in the code base, and not all of them are wrong. Fair? That's fair. Because some of them were written 2 months ago with all the knowledge they had. Some of them were written 4 years ago, of course. That's a different, that might be a different situation. So what we did, we created Google Sheet. It always is in Google Sheet, honestly, those things. And we started to map the health of those components. We identified few attributes. We said, what does it mean to be healthy? We also identified which components are in Figma, which are in React, and how is the parity between them. And we started another dashboard in Looker. We just sync those data from this Google Sheet. We actually asked our data team to bring those data from Google Sheet to Looker, and we visualized what is the current state of the parity. And this was one of the OKRs for the team, improve the parity between Figma as a design tool and React. I also mentioned that we had several like health criteria for each component, and this came from the brainstorming with the design system team. We just defined things that we think are important, what it means high quality component for us, and we started mapping them. And we took this information, it was actually written as a TypeScript object, living close to the component, nothing automated, very much manual, even with the link to Figma, which sometimes broke because things move around, you know. So, but it was still helpful. This was in our storybook. Every designer, every developer could go to our storybook and see this chart there. And we also created a small, simple formula for deciding one label for the component. If it's healthy, if it's not healthy, which means it has known issues, and then of course adding those known issues there and deprecate it. And when we did this for all of the old components, like 80, 90 of them, we had 70 of them which were like known issues, and we knew that. We actually called it first legacy, and there was a huge pushback from the company because not all of them were legacy components. And just by the sound of legacy, people didn't want to use them, because why would they use legacy work? So we actually needed to change the labeling for this. To people, hey, yeah, we know they have issues, but they are still the best thing you can use and you should use. Let's go to community. We can see this on many design systems pages. There is usually a big table and some badges there about the health, about the maturity of the component. There are some interesting examples. One is from the Ariane status. They have also matured the status for the component, and I can already see that you can create charts from this. You can create a chart. I don't know if you like or you don't like pie charts, but sometimes they are helpful to communicate some information. This is hard to digest for management. Charts are easier, so try to visualize it in the way it works for them. It's similar to what Morgane actually mentioned with changing the language to what people are used to listening. And here is an example from Adobe Spectrum. They have, I think, about 20 different criteria for components, and they just have them on the bottom of each component. As you can see, we at Product Board use this as an inspiration. We use also seeds from Sprout Social, and we combine it together because that was something that worked for us very nicely. Shameless plug here. I mentioned that I work at Supernova. What we do at Supernova, we actually try to connect those things together. We have a feature which is a component table, and you can track statuses or different properties of components. You can define those components, and then you can display them directly in documentation without any coding required, which is, I think super nice. You can also connect Figma component, so the connection actually don't break, which is something that I don't know how many times I needed to fix it in the JSON files. Satisfaction. Last but not least, this is about how people who are using our system are happy or not. We always use a survey for that, quarterly survey or just like random timelines. We tried to use tooling that was in the company already. We had like an HR tooling that was able to send satisfaction surveys, so we just used that tool because people were used to that. They had login there. It was also kind of helping communicating, hey, we are not asking for approval for a new tool or like that. And then we had these nice, again, summaries about the important things, and we of course shared those things with management. Like if we had like 30 responses and all of them agreed that our design system is saving their time, that's something we want to communicate to leadership because that's what will get us more funding, that's what will keep us alive. At QE, we use system usability score, which works pretty well, I guess, because the design system is a system and it needs to be, language needs to be changed. It's a very old framework, but what was nice that we had a set of questions which was the same over a longer period of time, so we could actually compare quarter over quarter. We could say, okay, so this quarter, all the red in the Q2 versus Q3 was actually because Figma. People hated Sketch, people hated Abstract, especially hated Abstract at our company, and they just didn't want to use it, and we were getting lots of pushback for that, and they wanted us to migrate to Figma, which we just weren't ready for. But they told us, so at least that. One tip, collect qualitative responses. Quantitative data are great, but it's hard to create stories from them. This is much better, especially if someone who has a good organizational power, meaning people know that person, people listen to that person, and they will give you a shout out somewhere, print, screenshot it, and share it in presentations, plug it into all hands, so people can see how your work of the design system team is impacting individuals, because it's all about people, right? So let's move quickly to research and content discovery, which is the part where we try our design system, our curve to grow again. And at this point, you probably have, let's visualize that we have a major design system because that's where we are in the life cycle. And at this point, we should have a lot of data. We should have data from all satisfaction surveys. We should have data from all UI audit and UI inventory. What I see very often, people will spend a lot of time doing UI inventory, and after the first month, they will ditch it and it will die in Figma file structure, and they will never go back to it. But there is so many interesting informations either after a year of working on design system, because you have picked some things that you want to focus on now, and some not. So why to not use this data when you want to grow your design system? You also hopefully did some initial research. When you start a design system, you talk to designers, developers, product managers, QA team, stakeholders about their expectations, about what they want from a design system. And I recommend you make notes, make transcriptions of those talks, because those are super valuable data. At least I always forget 80% of the things. I just remember the juicy stuff, because I think that's how our brains work. And I had those data, and I just went through them when we were figuring out what to do next with our design system. And if it's outdated, ask people again, do structured interviews again, do the thing that you would do for your product. Because as a product designer, you would do this. If you don't know what to do, you would go to users and you would ask them. They would tell you what their problems are. And this one is specifically important for continuous discovery. Be close where people are, be there. For us, it was people were on Slack already. They were asking questions there, they have discussions there, they complained there. Figma comments, there is so much gold in Figma comments. People discuss UI patterns, people discuss how they don't know what to do with design system, how they don't know how to name things. Probably they didn't discuss it there, but they discuss how to label things in buttons, UX writing, and so on. GitHub, PR comments are there is so much good stuff there. People are reviewing stuff all over again, things that could be solved by design system, and also meetings as, for example, design critiques. We as designer, we had 2 design critiques, actually 4 design critiques in a week, and they were organized by product teams. And we as design system designers, we weren't part of product teams, but we were kind of hijacking their meetings, and we were just there with them, asking questions, collaborating on features with them, and listening where the system breaks for them. Because it was a very common conversation. I wanted to do it with the design system, but it wasn't possible, so I needed to diverge. And when you are on the grid with them, you can ask why, more whys. You can ask like what exactly didn't work, what did you try, what you haven't tried. And make notes from that and try to make it somehow systemic so you can actually, it's a lot of data, honestly. If you are taking notes from all the grids, all the comments, all the GitHub sessions, all select notes, you should have some systemic way how to manage it. And I work with Product Board. Product Board is a product management platform, so we were using that for collecting all the feedback. We were pushing all this feedback into Product Board. What was the best thing is that there was also a lot of feedback from customers of the product itself. And I did some analysis, and like 5 to 8% was about UI, about UX issues. Lots of, like mostly was feature requests. That's what people are requesting from the product, right? But lots of was about UX issues, about dark mode. All of those things that could be solved by a design system. And what is critical about having access to this pool of feedback on the product is that it's much easier to identify things that can be impactful for the business. And design system can help with. And after, another thing that Product Board does, you can take an insight from the node that you create there, and you can connect it to idea. And over time, you will get a prioritized list of ideas, things that people are requesting the most often. And I was doing this, for example, for automating the delivery of the icons. We had the idea that we would love to have automated pipeline, but we didn't know if it's worth it. So we started to track every request where someone asked us for review an icon when they added it to code. And after some time, we had actually like arguments why it matters to invest into this specifically. I could talk about this for an hour. I actually did. But if you are more interested in like this side of tracking feedback, working with feedback, collecting feedback from various channels, I have a talk about it recorded. Let's wrap it up. There is a lot of things that can be tracked for design system, like really a lot, and I think I don't have everything there. So find what works for you. I'm just emphasizing what Morgane actually said here like 20 minutes ago. Find what works for you, focus on those things, and use those things to understand how people use your design system, how they, not how, but track how people are extending the design system and how they customize it, because this can help you to figure out what to bring back to a system. Have strong feedback loops, which mean be close to users of the design system, be on their meetings. Do not force them to go to your meetings, be there, be where they have discussions already, and definitely partner with your data team, because we wouldn't ever be able to do all of this because we are not experts in data visualizations and data tools. We just ask our data team, hey, can you, if you have data team, of course, we were large enough, but if you have data team, ask them. They're usually super happy about someone giving them more data. Last but not least, take all of this information and share the juiciest parts with your stakeholders, because that's what will help you to get some traction over time. And if they will hear it and see the impact continuously, there is a bigger chance that your design system team will survive. That's it from me. As I mentioned, there is a link to all the resources that I have mentioned, a few more. The sticker on top, they are there in the back. So if you want that sticker, it's there. Also some other more spec from Supernova. So yeah, thank you very much. Sorry for all the water.
Oh, that was a smooth one. Thank you so much, Jan. That was fantastic. Okay, so we're going to move over to our Q&A in a second. So I've got the QR code up here for those of you who still want to add some questions. Before we do that, I wanted to just have a quick check on the live feed, because we have a few more people from far, far away land. We got someone from Isle of Man, which I think is fantastic. It's quite unusual. And Poland, not so unusual, but that's awesome too. And Kent. So we have people logging in from all over, which is amazing. From Brazil to Kent. What? That's pretty awesome. I know, I know. So unfortunately, as I said before, James had to get on one of the most famous UK trains and try to get out of London. So he can't join us for this section. But I would like to welcome back. Are we mic'd up? We are mic'd up. Fantastic. Oh, they are having a right giggle at the back here. They are not paying any attention to me at all. Here we go. So I would love to welcome both of you back on stage. We are going to do some Q&A here. Let's see how smooth this is. Oh, yes, it's going to be amazing. Continue as we were. Welcome back. How are you feeling after your talk?
All right, I guess.
All right, good. You should. It was very good. Fantastic. Brilliant.
People here made it easy because they were laughing at
They
my
are-
jokes. I made even more design system
They are,
jokes.
they laughed at the right places, yes.
Thank you.
You've been a very good audience so far, I have to say. You've been very, very, very good. We are having some slight mic issues in the meantime. Do we have any live questions? Do we have anyone that's brave enough to go, oh yeah, someone over there is thinking like, should I not? Should I not? If you feel like you don't want to, please feel free to use the Slido deck. But otherwise, if you feel brave, go for it. Here we go. Jan is back with a microphone.
Hopefully.
Fantastic. And for those of you watching on the live feed, do use the deck Slido link rather to put your questions in. So I'm going to kick us off immediately. Why not? Morgane, I have a question here for you, which is for you. Are these Design System Council members different divisions and disciplines, and how many people? Who decides what problems that get most attention?
Ooh, very interesting question. I didn't mention, but actually we changed the people who are part of, I mean, that's the whole goal of having a council, is you can change it. People can rotate in and out. And at the very beginning, it was mostly designers in my team, but then design systems started to be used by other division. And so instead of, I think I did mention that brought us political peace, because by nature, the way we constitute the council, okay. The council is a set of rules that say you have to have time for it, you have to be using it. So by nature, that kind of excludes all the managers. This is how I excluded myself from the system. But just to make sure that people working, I have to be as dangerous here. So people who actually do work on the system are part of the council, and not just someone very high up who wants to dictate stuff. And we trust
active contributors rather than decision makers. Okay.
And so we trust those professionals to make the best decisions, who will represent their users. And as I said at the beginning, it was people in my team. Then we shared with other division. And then it happened that the other division were not able to pitch in anymore. And then we realized that it was only designers so far. So then we opened the council to developers, might be a thing. And so today that's how it is. It's like half designers, so 4 people, half designers, half developers.
Amazing. Jan, have you guys got anything similar, or how is sort of your design system run? Or is there a council decentralized, or how does that work?
Yeah, we tried it as well, because company didn't want to invest into a dedicated design system team. And actually having the data helped us to get a team. Some of the data, I'm not sure if I mentioned those specific ones, but yeah, because we weren't just moving fast enough with the design system. So the parity thing, where we started to map all of the components we have, their health, their quality, and slowly how they are also used, was actually done before we had design system team, because we were working with front and platform team who helped us to scan the code base. And I'm louder now.
Yeah, I think you're on.
Scan the code base, and as I said, with the help of data team, we were able to get some visualizations. But yeah, we had council. We just, for the company, it wasn't fast enough. It would take too long to get where they wanted to get.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So again, we're going to start off with you here, Morgane. So how would you address potential fat finger errors? Oh, done a lot of those myself. Sorry about that. Fat finger errors in financial trade ticket UIs. So obviously you were mentioned earlier that things can go terribly wrong in your field. How do we try to work in for the fat? Did someone see me do something and then ask me if it was about me? Because I feel targeted here, but fat fingers is obviously an issue. How do we try to sort of prevent that, or how can we support that?
I have so many ideas, but for the sake of time, obviously you can prevent it in design using patterns. Fly check is one of the patterns you can prevent. That is obviously when you can stop the process and ask someone, another pair of eyes to look at it, but sometimes you have to go fast. And when you have to go fast, then that means it has to be in the UI. If it's in the UI, then the temptation is to make it only on the front end side, whereas fat finger should be managed by the back end. I mean, is that going too far from is it too far from design system? Anyway, so this is where sometimes when we only work on design system, we need also to keep in mind what's happening in the backend. Because obviously the scale of potential errors, we really need, at least in my company, to rethink about those things. This is why we tend to say that we have just UI elements that are completely agnostic to backends, but we actually tend to have also components that are linked to backend systems, so, such as like the one we have on training platforms. So yeah, UX plus backend.
UX plus backend.
Yeah.
That's the solution for fat fingers. So this is back to you, Jan. We've got quite a people interested in accessibility in general. Obviously, accessibility is a super important everyday part of things now. Do you have any advice on how to potentially measure and track accessibility for a design system? I guess it's actually both of you, but do you want to start us off, Jan?
I wish I had, but we try to do audits. We try to do like regular audits at Kiwi. We are doing like quarterly checks, and we were just being loud about it, plugging it into presentations, sharing with stakeholders, hoping that someone will like it and give us a mandate for that, and will become an executive sponsor for that. At product board, we were actually 2 or maybe 3 of the criteria from the health status were about accessibility. It was about the colors, two of them. One was about the colors, of course, which is usually easier to get right. Not always in practice, but it's definitely easier than in code, where it's a significant investment, especially into refactoring of the product. So that was our strategy, that we didn't talk much about accessibility, but we were pushing for adoption and building like our stuff that are accessible. It would never get into 100%, of course, but it would improve us at least at some aspects. At product board, it was a bit easier because with accessibility, it comes also, especially like product board is a productivity software, so people need to be fast when they're using it because they're using it 4 or 5 hours per day, and we didn't have things like arrows working when you search for stuff. So any selection basically meant that you need to click around as the user, which was annoying. So this was actually our way how to sell accessibility into our product. At Kiwi, it was more transactional business because it's where you buy tickets. So we were actually going through conversion, and we were also introducing special components just for accessibility and navigation, and kind of stating, hey, it's an important aspect of what we do. We should be thinking about it when we deliver things.
Okay. Awesome. Have you got any thoughts on how to measure accessibility, or how do you guys work generally with accessibility in your design system?
With design system? Yeah. Yes, I was going to say it's difficult, right, both ways. Yeah, I mean, in the design system, at least we'll try not to cause accessibility issues, but I think my biggest battle is for people to understand that it's not because you use a design system without accessibility issues that your products will be accessible. Because obviously, I suppose it's a complex topic, and people just see, oh, accessibility work has been done on design system, I'm good. And then I have to go and explain, no, for each product to do the audit, and you can still implement things. So I think I ended up saying, it's not because you have a set of Legos that means something that you're going to build something that means something. But it's, I think, a long-term battle of for people to understand what it is and to prioritize it, especially on new features, because they do the audit once, but it's ongoing. So I think it's general awareness that we're trying to promote. But yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, so it's as you say, it's not just because your design system passes accessibility, doesn't mean that your product automatically will. So and it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic, brilliant. I actually have a question for you, Jan. So you were talking a little bit about, I'm going to kind of call it buy-in. So in some of the previous conversations that we had around design system at DSL, we talked about buy-in for a long time. And I guess all the stuff that you are saying here, they are really, really good tips that we should all take away and think about. But they sort of once you actually start. But what do I do if I'm in the process of, I really want to kick off a design system and I haven't got there yet? And my team really wants it. And I have other people in the organization that kind of wants it. But then you have sort of, there tends to be a level above everyone else who might potentially not understand why should we have it and what will it give us. Both of you actually, what kind of tips can we give those people to say, this is what you need to take back to your senior CEOs, C-level people, and tell them, this is what design system will do for you?
Do you want to start with this one?
No, nobody wants to start.
Just a bit of context, I wasn't hired as a design system person to Kiwi, and I was hired to product board, but there was no plan for a design system team, no buy-in for that. That's a different discussion, how to be a design system person without having anyone in the company. Different discussion, lots of memories there. But maybe one thing I would recommend is not to fight this alone. Try to find someone who actually has some organizational leverage, and find someone who people already listen to, especially if you are a new person. Executives will probably not listen to you because, like, who am I? Honestly, who am I in the organization if there's 300 more people, and I just am the person who has some other idea how to have more work for everyone for some time. So I was trying to find executive champion. That's, I think, the key. Find someone who has some record of successful changes, I believe, in a company, who are able to push at the right places, who are connected with the right people, and to get some buy-in. And if you don't have anyone who is from exec or high enough in the organization, look for partnerships in other teams. And that's what happened at Product Board for us. Front-end platform team, there was a buy-in for front-end platform team, there wasn't a buy-in for design system team. So we just talked together, and I found a champion as in an engineering manager of a platform team who were actually willing to put a few people from his team onto design system, because the mission was about the stability for front-end platform team, and that was very similar for design system as well. But I think in one sentence, don't fight it alone. Try someone who will help you.
Find a partner to be a champion with. Excellent. Have you ever been in the scenario where you sort of have to try to convince people that this is the right thing to do? I know you guys have been going on for 8 years. Remember back when it started?
No, but I mean, somehow it's sad because when something is okay, then people turn the gaze into something more urgent than the things that are okay. So even if you have a design system now, it's like questions, how do you keep people interested in it? Because then they're going to forget about it, and then you have to justify why we should invest in it. Finding allies, I think, is the most important. For us, actually, the design system, I mean, back then was not named design system, but started from a dev initiatives, because their projects always asked them to do more and more web-based platforms, and they were kind of, I guess, tired of always re-implementing the PDF brand guidelines. And then they realized that maybe they needed help on the design side. So we partner up, and this is how we kind of invested in the design system. But I have to say, sometimes also I feel like maybe it's not the right time for your company to have a design system. I don't know if it's, I'm gonna get some tomatoes here.
Controversial.
Sorry. No, I mean, if there's things super urgent, like let's say, if there's a cybersecurity threat to your company, maybe indeed they better invest in that first before doing design system. And I feel sometimes it's just listening about the cues, like the adaptive color mentioned. It was there for a while, and then there's these opportunities, and then you catch it. And being able to sense what's happening. I mean, I guess just to give you an example, when we pitched the business pattern slides that I shared earlier, it was a very bizarre moment because that was the week where the war started. And even myself, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to talk design system to someone who has to deal with crazy rakes and craze, like a war. You know, we had also a subsidy in Russia. So, you know, it all felt a bit like, oh my God, who am I, you know? So in that moment, maybe that was not the best time to talk about business patterns, but it's like, yeah, finding the moment to push for your agenda.
Find the right moment, find the right champion, the right ally.
Yeah.
And maybe do not get discouraged. Like, the good thing about design systems is that they are very wide. It's also a bad thing about design systems, but a good thing is they are wide. So there are many places where you can kind of plug into a company. You mentioned, I think, brand team. I mentioned front-end platform team. We were lucky with the design team before. So there are some chances. Just find the right path. And if the first one doesn't work, just brace yourself and try it again. Maybe you will be lucky, because you need also a bit of luck, to be fair.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm sure we can all agree with that. So let's say that we have now actually managed to get this buy-in. We got design system going. You guys have been working on it for 8 years. How do you go back to the organization and financially sort of get that support continuously? This is for you, Morgane. It's going to be a tough one.
This is recorded. No, I think I can say that. One of the reasons we wanted a council is because we want people to rotate in and out, but also we want people to be able to switch to design system work, which means basically the design team and the dev team supports the design system, but it's nowhere in budget tables, which means you can't defund the design system because it's integrated in the team and it's integrated in the way we work. It's like you can't defund HR. So this is how we ended up having, but again, it doesn't mean that there's no conflict of priorities. At some point, it's just about keeping the explanation of how we're doing things, and yeah, like putting the discussion on, you know, cost, time to markets, and things like that also help for people just to keep, for that to be still in their mind.
Keep showing those outcomes and the positive
Yes.
that actually has the time that you're saving, the cost that you talked about.
Yeah. And hide the design system people in the organization.
Protect. Okay, brilliant, excellent. Any comments on you on that, Jan? How do we keep kind of, I guess, not necessarily validating, but justifying that this team is still existing and that we still need this team?
I was talking about it in my talk, and just using the data we collected, finding which type of data resonates with different people in the company is important. This was the focus part. And sometimes you cannot do anything. Sometimes it may happen that it will just get defunded. So it's also all right, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, like communicate the values, highlight the stories of people who are using the design system, all the things that I mentioned there. Make people who are using the design system to realize that they don't want to work without it anymore, and try them to be loud as much as possible.
Yeah, fair enough, absolutely. So we have the council, we have people adopting it, everyone's loving it, you are very happy. Then all of a sudden people start implementing it and using it badly. Yes. How do we deal with that? What do we do then? Replace them in the council.
What do you mean by using it badly?
So it's actually a question here that we have. So how do you handle situations when you've seen teams badly implement parts of the design system? They're not using it correctly, or they sort of implement it incorrectly or badly. How do we deal with that? So we make sure that the design system sort of don't swear off in a particular direction and just goes off track.
Yeah, that happens every day. We're in a big organization, you know, so I mean, at some point, you know, nothing can be 100% perfect. I think, and you mentioned not 100% accessible, but like using the design system completely in a right way. I mean, I think probably only people in the council, and I would say even people from the council, sometimes I see that design, like, are you even following your design system? I'm not sure. It's probably, it depends, obviously, is it for a real need, or is it like because they didn't know, not trained? So what we try to invest a lot in currently is trying to scale up trainings and understandings, such as like training paths for developers, for designers, and try to catch this before things happen, but then things will happen. And I think at this stage, it's more like, especially if you're in a big organization, not taking it personally, it's good for your mental health, but also just thinking that it's like, you know, statistics, there will be in the distribution extremes in the good way and the bad way. So you may just stumble on someone who is at the end of the distribution. I mean, I'm not saying that to projects, obviously, they'll be funded, but that's just how it is. Statistically, it will happen. Yeah. And yeah, you just have to accept that there's reviews to be done and rework to be done because that has happened.
Excellent. How have you had scenarios where the team hasn't necessarily used it the way that you would have liked them to?
Always, as Morgan said. But I would maybe like switch the question to why are we confident that our solution is the right one? How do we know that them using badly is not just our perception, because they use it differently than we want it? And if we have research for that, perfect. Share the research with them, make the case why what is in the design system is there. If you have research, put it into your documentation. Like if it's not there, they don't have the context you have. They maybe don't even know that they use it differently than you want it. I would like to avoid the word badly as much as possible, because I think that's very relative. And what I learned is that design systems can never account for all the use cases, and especially when new products or new features that we didn't know about when we designed the pattern emerge in the product, the pattern may be not enough anymore.
Yeah, I agree. You got to build in some kind of flexibility from the beginning. You have to understand that this is the system, nobody touched it in their right way. So I think that's super important to have a flexibility and allow people to actually do an alternative way, because sometimes we end up replacing patterns with something that they do instead.
And it's also about the objectives of the company. What do they want with design system? Is the goal consistency? I don't know if it's a good or bad goal, but it might be goal for someone, consistency. For some companies I have worked with, the goal was speeding up development. And they didn't care about consistency that much, because why? They wanted developers and product teams be more efficient with design system. And if they use it badly, but they are still fast, and it works for users, that's an important piece, and it works for users who are using the feature, it's maybe all right. Maybe it's your job then as a design system manager to actually figure it out in design system, how you track those things, so it doesn't break after 3 years of everyone using it badly.
So I think you sort of touched a little bit on an answer of another question that we have here, which is sort of similar. How do we make sure that the design system is flexible enough to accommodate the variety of products? So, you know, how do we manage inevitable deviations and, as we say, inconsistencies? Not necessarily deliberate ones or by mistake, but actually deliberate one because it's actually it's meant for different products. It's supposed to be scalable.
I guess I can start on this one. So I guess, yes, as Jan said, it depends on how you, like the goals of your design system. Is it to cover absolutely everything? Can you absolutely not do anything that is not in the system? For us, because we have so many products, we knew that what we said to project is like, on average, the system should provide 90% of your elements, 5% adaptation, 5% creation. We even have, I guess the tendency is like some projects would try to push their own components, so we maintain it. So in that case, we try to rethink, okay, is it really something that should be in this, at the system level? And if not, then we had actually a word for that is actually part of one of the Medium article, which is like trying to categorize the different types of requests. And sometimes a component is just a snowflake, which is, it would just exist in one of the product. It will never be at the system level, and that's good enough. That's part of the 5%. So trying to quantify, obviously, is just estimates, and it's not a fixed rules, but for people just to understand that not everything should come from the system either.
I will mention one example from Kiwi. We actually started with supporting one product and one platform only, the web. We ignored iOS, we ignored Android, because we just didn't have the capacity for that, and we were trying to define focus. But soon company decided that they want to build their own product support, customer support tool, because they had like 1,500 agents, customer agents, and just wasn't efficient for the company to actually use something third party. And it also didn't do the job the company wanted. So they started to build a new product, which was completely different. Suddenly it was B2B, or it was internal, but it would be B2B, where the original product was B2C. And we were stressing out about them using things from the product or from the design system in a different way, because they had completely different needs. And we wanted to have consistency in how they display, for example, flights information, but they had great arguments about, hey, we need different information and flight information for agents than we need for users. And this was like bulletproof for us, like, okay, I get it. So we started to ease down a bit on how they use the system, and it was more about the speed of delivery for them and using the atomic parts. But we also communicated that the design system is actually optimized for specific product, and if you use it elsewhere, good, use it, and please give us feedback, and we will try to accommodate it for your product as well. But it's more about how you extend the things. So again, we were starting to be more open in APIs, because for the original product we were very, very closed, because we kind of didn't want people to change it, which I believe was a mistake, like retrospectively. I think we evolved, but yeah. And sometimes it's okay to not support all of the products. Maybe it's okay to tell them, use material design, because it will work perfectly what you want to do with your product.
Fair enough. Cool. We have time for maybe one more question. There's a couple of here. So actually, this one might be a quick one. I don't know. What's one software program that you would learn or use to help you determine that your design system is working? Is there such a thing as a tool or program for that, to determine that the design system is working?
What does it mean that it's working? Sorry, I'm asking questions more than answers, I guess. But,
that's okay. That's okay. I mean, the answer could also be that you're not familiar with any such tools, but ultimately this is the question. What's one software program, one to rule them all, one software program would you learn or use to help you determine your design system is working?
Notion. Notion or Confluence, anything where you can write document and share it with people.
Yeah, fair enough. Take notes, basically. Note it down.
And use documents to convince people that it's working.
One tool, evaluations, and appraisals. You gotta use the design system.
There you go.
Objectives.
Objectives. That's fair enough. I think we'll go with that one. Do you think that metrics like design system adoption and component usage only become compelling once a design system have actually proven its value? Or is it something that is important or useful before it proves its value? That's another question here.
Can you repeat?
I can indeed. Let me see if I can find it again. Do you think that metrics like design system adoption and component usage only become compelling once the system has proved its value? or are they important before the value has been seen?
I guess it's always good to have metrics on what you do in general. But it's true that I think when I hear about that, it's mostly for people who maintain it to know where to invest next or keep the maintenance. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, if you're still in the early phase and you try to get people to use it, maybe you want to invest more on maybe the selling part of design system and the education part and spending time with people to show them how it works. So yeah, I feel like metrics is really when you start trying to understand what you do next. If you're at the very beginning, again, it's all priorities, right? So yeah, I guess that's probably what I will say. Any views here?
Yeah, I would say the same. I think it becomes a great tool for you for observing how do things work and doesn't work. And also the fact that you have a buy-in right now doesn't mean you will have buy-in in a year. Because people leave companies, people join companies, there can be a new executive, there can be someone who doesn't believe that, you need to convince them again. Your executive champion left the company. Those things happen because people change jobs. So I think it's always better to have some like ammunition to have for argumentations.
Yeah, and I also think that is sometimes you can also lose what used to be an ally or champion can also change the mind because something didn't work out the way that you thought it was going to do, and then all of a sudden you're back to not having the ally or champion with you.
Yeah, which is exactly what was on the life cycle, right? We were on the top with the maturity and it started degrading to decline slowly.
Excellent. Okay, so do we have anyone brave enough to give us a question live from the audience? Not trying to look at anyone in particular. I'm really scanning now just to make sure that nobody feels targeted. Okay, I've given you plenty of chances, so I don't want anyone walking away from here thinking, oh, I can't believe I didn't get to ask my question. Okay, brilliant. In that case, we are going to take a very quick leg stretcher this time. Anyone needs to use the bathroom and whatnot. And in the meantime, when you come back in, let's say 5 minutes, because I know it's going to take you more, but I'm going to say 5 minutes. And so by the time you come back, we should have the lovely Louis here and ready to take on all of your Figma-focused questions. Thank you so much to both of you. Thank you also for your talks. And good luck with both of your systems and continuous work. And I hope I see you again very soon. Cheers for now. as well. Okay, hello online people, if you're still there. Audience members. I thought this was going to be the thing that everyone was really here for, but you know. Are you not on? You have to press that red button apparently. Are you on now?
4, 5.
There we go. Okay, so we are ready to pick up with Louis here with some Figma-related questions. While you guys were still sort of getting back into your seat and chatting, Louis and I were talking about what our album cover for our Christmas single were going to look like. We were thinking something like this,
like
maybe.
this?
Louis Square.
This would work.
This would work, wouldn't it? This would be brilliant. Available on a DSL channel, YouTube channel very soon. Okay, so we are here for Ask Me Anything. Do you want to give an introduction first, or how do you want to do this, or should we just jump straight in? How were you feeling like?
Yeah, I took a look at the questions, and a lot of them are yes/no questions, or
good.
questions where I would like to ask questions back. So if anybody did ask the questions that were in the room, let's have a conversation about the things. I actually had lots of opinions about the other questions from before as well.
Oh, excellent.
So if we want to jump back into those.
Okay, so we need to be out of the building by 10 o'clock, but let's go.
Give me 3 hours.
Oh yeah, so I should mention this as well, because I forgot to mention this earlier. If you all of a sudden hear a fire alarm, do not be alarmed. Question 1. I've heard rumors that Figma is going to release its own native token feature soon. Can you share some details?
No, next question.
Ooh.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I think the rumor is probably put to bed. We've been very vocal about something like that being worked on. Just to give you some context about product process, I suppose, this has been being worked on for probably 3 years already. And the branching feature was probably worked on for 3 years as well. Interactive components was in beta for an entire year. So these things take a very long time to produce. So firstly, thanks everybody for your patience on whatever this becomes. But actually, to answer the question, the design tokens their goal is to be agnostic and to be platform agnostic, where you can use something that gets pushed out into many different platforms. We have the same thinking, thankfully, and in really positive news, there's a community group that is working on design tokens from the W3C, design tokens module format. Just follow that guide as closely as you possibly can, because we are following that guide too. So follow the guide, get yourself set up. And this is actually more of an engineering question, to be honest with you. It's less of a design question. That's why it's sort of systems thinking in its core. Follow that module, set up a JSON file, and you should be fine.
So,
but fact. Design system that is successful is the start of another 6-12-month journey. So to get yourself set up ahead of time, follow that format, get your module formats in place, set up your own internal variation of whatever this format looks like, and test it out and see what happens. On the Figma side, honestly, it doesn't really matter, because this is more of an engineering problem that we need to solve first. On the design side, I don't really care how many design library files you have, as long as it's working for the consumers of that file. So have one token file, one style file, or 10, or 500. Use the tokens plugin if that works for you. But aside from that, work alongside that format that is being published, which is still in a work in progress, by the way. So they still haven't entirely figured it out, just to give you an indication about how hard the problem this is to solve.
So that was not one of the yes or no answers, basically?
No.
No. Okay. It's not going to be under your Christmas tree, but keep working. So excellent, thank you. The next question here is there a roadmap or plan in the works to make Figma more accessible? A truly accessible collaboration tool would be game-changing. Oh, it's a bit of a burn in that question as well, isn't it? Just, you know.
The short answer is yes. The long answer is we have an internal committee, an accessibility committee, which was established earlier this year, who are working on things like this. We released a beta feature recently for more accessibility navigation within prototypes themselves. And that's just one of the first steps that we're looking to take to make that more of a thing. As you can imagine, this is also very difficult. One of the benefits of Figma as a product when it first started, that it was collaborative by nature. And that was because of the platform and code-based choices that we made 10 years ago, which was to build everything on WebGL. WebGL is amazing, but it's not HTML. So now what unfortunately we have to do is retrospectively build HTML into WebGL to enable you to have things like tab order navigation within your prototypes. So that's why this is kind of unfortunately complicated, is because the thing that made Figma successful in the first place is now making it quite hard to retrospectively make web-based products. So accessibility is a thing that is being figured out, and the dark mode that was released 6-9 months ago was one of the first steps, hopefully an indicator to show you that from the back end we're actually working on that on our own products first to dog food the ideas, and then we'll ultimately over the next year, 2, 3, 5 years, roll out more of an accessible product itself.
Excellent. Okay.
I think the small wins, as Jan mentioned earlier, are color and type size. The Figma product itself does not have very good color contrast. We're aware of that. And the main font is an 11 point. So it's quite small, quite gray, and doesn't really work against the white background that we initially set up. So those sorts of things are initially being worked on as part of a larger UI refactor itself, which then feeds into a larger project of accessibility.
Small steps, getting there.
As everything.
Excellent. Good, good. We actually have another question about future plans as well. It's going to be a lot of those, I'm sure of it. Is there a future plan to introduce documentation tools natively to Figma?
This is one of those questions I would like to have a conversation with the person who asked it. So
and you know what? I know who's I actually know who asked this question, so he's not going to get away from it. No, it wasn't me, but I think we have the gentleman here at the front waving at us.
Yeah, the question back really is, what is documentation to you? I could probably guess, but it'd be great to hear in your own words what that means.
So we've used tools such as Zero Height and things like that, and I was wondering if, since Figma is already agglomerating a lot of tools into itself, if documentation wouldn't be one of those.
Yeah, I don't think we should do that. We probably will, but I don't think we should, because nobody reads documentation. That's why I speak to customers every single day who have invested years into custom-built, public-facing documentation websites that don't get read by the design team. They might be like a marketing, branding, business objective to sell that value of the design system. But then you find, firstly, they don't get read because they're out of date. Somebody has to be then sourced on to maintain that documentation. That's a really important point to firstly validate whether you need a site or anything in general, or you focus on solving that business problem of like what we're there to do. Back to the actual question. I'm seeing a lot of design teams bring documentation closer to the component. So navigating the canvas with, I'm sorry, I'm speaking very loud in it. Navigating the canvas with text alongside the components that says, this is what this means, this is why you should use it, these are the guardrails of that component. And it's clunky and it's not very sexy, but that's what is being most successfully implemented at the moment. So is that a documentation tool? I don't know. We released the find function recently, which allows you to a lot easier navigate the canvas itself. So if that's any indication about what you might be allowed to do in the future, yeah. What we're kind of thinking about at the moment is how can you navigate component libraries easier? At the moment, it's very difficult to find and see components in their context. Where is something being used, who's using it, and basically the visual representation of an entire library file. How could that be more visually mapped out for a user to see all the components, possibly in a folder format or a tree architecture? That's where we're kind of thinking at the moment. But traditional documentation, I actually don't know if we want it.
Okay, thank you.
Until somebody says it's useful for them.
Thank you. And until that, there are tools to use such as Zero Height and Supernova.
Well, they offer different versions of documentation, but I think the traditional essay writing of a single atomic component, I think, is out of date.
Yeah.
I think it's all about context and the decisions you're making rather than describing something that kind of everybody should either know or should be owned by a different team. People mention Storybook a lot for front-end engineering, and that does an awesome job of allowing engineers to own the documentation. So why would we want to separate and have two versions of documentation in multiple different places, managed by different people on different budgets and timelines and resources? What's the middle bit? And I actually don't know if designers should be owning the documentation, because ultimately the source of your product is the live product. So why are the engineering team not owning that? And these are sort of discussions I think we should be having internally to work out where, why, who, what, how of every single thing we're doing. Is Storybook enough? It might be. So let's not recreate everything in Figma. Let's push our designers to learn a bit more about the engineering side. Again, not really a yes or no answer.
You're doing great. Don't worry. It's all good. It's very good answers. So thank you so much for that question. Next question is there what is the best course or resource to learn design system end to end, on one that shows how to fully utilize the latest updates to Figma's components, customization, and functionality? I might have to read that again.
I think that's probably 10 questions.
Yeah, I feel like that as well.
In one question. My question firstly back would be, do you really want to do that? It sounds like you need to hire 100 people for learning an end-to-end design system process. So let's try and break down what you kind of want to do. I'm presuming it's coming from a designer who's asked that question. So what does a design version of a design system look like? That's probably the UI kit version of a system, or the component side of it, or the styles, or the accessibility, or the content. And these could be spoken about for 10 minutes each as well. But honestly, if you're a person looking to learn about how to structure things, which I think is the most important part of a UI kit anyway, recreate something that you like. I know that people really hate when case studies are, here's my favorite app and I've redesigned it. But I do think that's actually very useful to learn structure and architecture of anything. Let's maybe not use Twitter. Take Mastodon as an example, and take their homepage, make it better, and redesign it, or recreate it inside a design tool of choice. And you will learn very quickly how to architect components, how to learn about spacing, how to learn about typography, and based off the decisions that that person has made. Once you've done that, you can think about the architecture of your files and your libraries and your components. And that's going to take you months to do, probably, if you want to do it well. So that will in itself teach you about libraries, components, styles, file architecture, publishing, release management, versioning, implementation. And they're basically all the things you're going to need to know to build a design system. So recreate something. It doesn't really matter what it is. Probably the simpler, the better. Maybe take a single component. Take a form, because unfortunately most designers are just designing forms all day. Take a form and try and recreate that in your design tool in the most effective way as possible. That will teach you everything you need to know about building an end-to-end design system from the design context. If you think about engineering, you're going to have to learn how to code. That can take you a decade. So think about how you can partner with somebody to maybe implement that version of your idea from the design side.
The answer is basically there is no shortcut.
There is no shortcut.
You got to get your hands dirty, and you just got to get the work done.
I know that people like me talk about design systems a lot as they're like an easy thing to do, but it's really not. And so that's probably first ask yourself whether you need to be doing this. Does your team need a design system, or does it need to sell a product first? And once you've had product validation, then you can start thinking about that design system itself. But yeah, the end-to-end side is something that Google haven't even figured out. So I don't know if a single person's going to be able to do that over a weekend. So it's just break down every single thing into a chunk and work out how you can manage that yourself.
Excellent. Another question. Figma allows to import React components. Is it possible to create a full UI app as a designer without the dev work, so UX designers can deliver the app? Is this a yes or no question?
Let's just not do that. We don't want design tools to export production code. We think we do, but we definitely don't, because there's just no way a design tool could have the resourcing to tail chase the latest versions of React, Angular, Vue, raw JavaScript, HTML5, CSS3, and every single platform that needs to be supported on the planet. It's just not going to happen unless you have an unlimited budget. So getting to a point where you maybe export a landing page that could work might be something you want to do. You might be able to export a HTML structure that is suitable. But still, that's not really a product. So if you want to get to a situation where your design app is exporting functional, accessible, semantic React code into an app format, it's never going to happen. That's only thinking about the designers. If you're thinking about the engineering side, every single engineering team I've ever spoken to has a different way of working, a different way of naming their components, and a different way of structuring their files. We're not going to be able to match that either. So the goal here is basically to reinvent the entire industry, which we just can't do. So I think we need to accept that creating products takes time, and the current tool landscape makes it very easy to think we can get ahead of that a lot easier, but we still need to take the time to produce quality product if we want that as our goal. If we don't, there's plenty of plugins that allow you to export HTML and CSS from any design tool that you could push to a GitHub repo, host it for free, and have a website up. Is that okay? It might be. I use GitHub Pages a lot myself for any landing pages that I want to spin up for free very quickly. The code's absolute trash, but it serves the purpose of what I need to do at that moment. That's still not a product. Product needs a lot more than what a design tool can provide right now. This is why we need to think on the other side. Do we want to sit more in the engineering? What frameworks can we use from an engineering perspective to spin up products a lot quicker? Things like Tailwind, as an example, might allow us to do that. Material, as an example, might allow us to do that a lot quicker. That's not a design conversation, in my opinion.
Fair enough. Okay.
Am I being opinionated enough?
I'm looking for more opinions. Don't worry, I've got more questions.
Okay, let's go up.
I've got more questions for you. Is there a plan for introducing a concept of templates in Figma similarly to how they work at FigJam, especially allowing to create your own custom ones?
This has been a question that has been asked probably weekly to me since we released the concept of templates in the product. And the answer is still no, unfortunately. I'm trying to bang that door a lot, and this is being recorded, so this is our feature request. Any feature requests you have, go to the support channel, because we do pay attention to support. That gets logged in an Asana board, which then gets prioritized and built. So any feature request, put it into that support channel for sure. To get around this, I would always so if you're working on the org or enterprise plan inside of Figma, I would create a team for that design system as a first step anyway. Have a project called templates, invite everybody as a viewer, set up those core templates, duplicate and drag into your team that you need to work from. That's the only way you're really going to get around it at the moment.
So whoever asked that question, get to that support channel and put that in there. Will you consider bringing GIF exports of prototypes directly to Figma? Please, smiley face. I didn't add that. That is the question.
That's another really common one, and the answer is probably. I think that it's just, anytime we think about a feature like that, we need to think about not shipping something. And I would prefer to work on something like conditional logic of a prototype rather than exporting in GIF format. But it will eventually happen, absolutely. There's just not on the immediate roadmap. So what I would do if I wanted to record a prototype was open QuickTime, record it, run another program called GIFski, GIFski fan over here, and then convert that to a GIF and use that one. I think there's enough workarounds at the moment to make it okay that it's not a top priority.
Hot tip. Excellent. Thank you. Figma and Storybook. What are the future plans?
Am I the CEO now? Storybook's open source, firstly, unless you look at Chromatic, which is a charged, understandably, platform that they are running on. Figma, you can embed in Storybook, if that's the question. I don't know what much more we can do. But I think there's a question behind the question of integrations. And yes, there's work being done on integrations deeper into the product. How can you make APIs more accessible? How can you allow developers to build what they need inside the product? That's happening behind the scenes. So yeah, there will be a deeper integration, but you're probably going to have to build it yourself.
Okay.
Which is actually related to the question earlier about code export. we don't want to support every library to export. We want you to be able to export to your naming conventions and your platform. So if you want to think about it that way, how can we as a product enable you to be more successful with your custom integrations rather than trying to predict what you may need?
Okay. Integrations, you mentioned that. Someone's got a question here. I just want to point out that it doesn't say will, it says when. When. Are you ready for this? It's a good one. When will Figma start integrating AI?
What?
I mean,
like what AI?
I don't know if you have the person who asked the question in the audience, because this is an anonymous question, but
yeah,
it's
by an AI. This is written by a bot.
It's an AI who wrote it.
When will Figma integrate AI? Well, if we want to be practical about this, there's a company called Diagram who just raised a lot of money to build AI design tools. They're working on the Figma platform. So it's already kind of there. You just, as I said before, you need to build it yourself. You need to define what AI means to you. If that is generating icons, or if it's generating imagery, or naming your layers, or naming your components, or whatever, like, you can build your own algorithms and build on top of the Figma API platform itself right now. So when is it coming? It's kind of already here. We're just not necessarily going to, again, predict what you want to ship, a feature that may never get used. And that's probably a useful philosophy just generally, is giving people the tools to build what they need rather than trying to say, use this thing in our way. Yeah, AI is a thing. You can do it. I'm not sure if I would say it's useful, but it's definitely possible at the moment. I think we don't want to take away the craft of the design process. And craft is a disgusting word. I know, I'm ashamed to say that.
I've got a couple of more questions. I've got a really big question that I'm going to save to them because it's such a good question. But in the meantime, can you explain? Sorry, I lost it here now. It was a very good question. I'm going to find it here, so bear with me 1 second. Oh, this form is all over the place. Can you explain FAFO to us?
Oh my God. We've got a troll in the audience.
I think it's the AI troll again.
Jesus Christ, I actually don't know what it means. Fuck around, find out? Is that what it means? It's a deep design philosophy from the 1400s that Aristotle invented, which was actually AI proven.
Brilliant. I'll take that answer. I'll take it. So if somebody wanted to get into, okay, so this is actually a serious question. So this one.
That wasn't serious?
No, it was absolutely a serious question. This is another serious question. If someone wanted to get into design systems, what would you recommend that they would learn first?
I think I answered this earlier with take a product, recreate it in your design tool of choice. What would you learn first when somebody wants to get into design systems? I think it's probably too early to think about design systems if you've got that question. It's more about how can we deliver value to our customers, and the design system is going to be part of that conversation. It's not going to be the conversation. Design system, the challenges you find when you're trying to get into let's build this thing is you're then creating a problem for yourself of having to validate that decision itself. Whereas I think, so Morgane was answering the question earlier about having something that's lasted for 8 years. How do you validate it? And I was like, well, you've already done it. You've already built the thing, and people now need to see the benefit of that. The challenge we face if we say, I want to build the thing, people can say, no, you don't. You're not going to support you for that. A design system naturally is going to be built over time and incrementally, just like any other thing in design is going to be done. Animation, prototyping, you don't just launch the prototype. You need to incrementally introduce that as a concept, educate people, and then roll those out as ideas to be tested and validated, similar to the design system. So I've also forgotten the question. When do you want to start a design system? Is learn the fundamentals of just building product. Product needs systems underneath it to make it work. And actually just speak to your developers. They're definitely going to be using a framework of some kind. And if they're not, you're in trouble. but they're definitely going to be using a class naming convention, a framework, or some kind, which you can learn from. Go and sit in their sprint planning meetings, sit in their retrospectives, sit in their daily stand-ups, and just learn what they're talking about. And you're going to understand that that system probably exists already. And then you can start to think, how can we retrospectively fit that into the work we're doing at the moment, if you need to. There's no reason why your design and engineering components should be named the same if they have different purposes and if they have different users. If your design team is made up of people who have absolutely no idea what HTML is, don't call your components something very hyper-specific because they're not going to be able to find it, and your adoption is going to be 0%. It might be useful just to describe those things in a lot more detail, which is probably not what you'd say is best practice, but the adoption rate will be much higher. And over time, you educate those people to learn why it's called a picker instead of a drop-down, because it's semantically important. Instead of jumping ahead to like the finished result, let's try and get there over time.
And if you want to learn a little bit more where to start on design systems, there are loads of great communities that you can join and go to. This being one of them. Just going to take a moment here to plug ourselves as well.
I think that with anything in design, the easiest way is to fuck around and find out. And to just go and play.
Beautifully done that. Beautifully done.
You planted it. You planted it very well.
Well done. Well done.
You're not going to learn unless you try it out. And I think designers are fortunate to have that buffer in their day job to experiment and learn on the job. And that happens, as I said, incrementally over time. There's not going to be an end result immediately.
So I'm going to move on to the next question. I need to grab the iPad for this one because hold on tight, people. This is a long one. Okay. Will it be possible to let elements wrap to the next lines once the max width of the parent container is reached by using auto layout? Will it, Louis?
The next version of auto layout is being worked on at the moment.
Okay.
But if you want to play funky with this one, the width of something can also be tokenized. So maybe that's what's happening somewhere.
I think actually that's all the questions we have on here. Oh, actually, I do have two questions. I have one question. What does a product designer role at Figma look like? I know you're not currently looking for people, but just like general, what does a product designer role at Figma look like?
I typically say that a designer at Figma spends more time in Dropbox paper documents than inside of Figma, because it's all about the communication of your ideas rather than the pixels that are on the page. And I'd also say that the Figma design system is not the best design system you've ever seen, because it works. What we typically have, as you can imagine, every single person in the company has editor access on the product, which means that is opened up to who can collaborate on anything at any time and who can contribute to any design at any time, which means that you get engineers designing, air quotes, product managers designing. The other day I saw one of our product marketing managers playing with component props, and that's not what you typically see from a product marketing manager somewhere else. So we typically have a creative-minded employee base, but because everybody can access and change things, that naturally means that you converge on what design looks like. A product designer is deeply focused on, firstly, not shipping a product that's not ready or not finished. So deadlines can be wavered if it's right. Spend a lot of time chatting with customers and just learning and paying attention and having our ear to the ground. Figma is very fortunate in that people will tell you what they want, aka this list of things, rather than having to ask for it explicitly. That's a challenge in itself. If you're thinking from a product mindset, you don't want to listen to the loudest minority people. So that is a balance that has to happen. There are separate product processes that handle with that. But a product designer typically gets put into I don't want to use the word squad, but squad, for want of a better word. And they work with PMs and engineers on a specific feature or track. So the product is broken down into prototyping, design systems, editor, FigJam, growth, enterprise, and things like admin management. So a designer will be put into one of those groups, mobile as well, put into one of those groups, and that's what their focus is from a product perspective. So we have designers specifically on prototyping. They become nerds about prototyping. Engineers also, PMs also, and we hire specifically for those roles. So somebody is not working on everything inside of Figma. They're working on a particular part of it, which, as you can imagine, introduces challenges, because if you've got people really focused on one area, that there needs to be a communication channel to another area, so there's not breaking changes across the whole platform, which probably means that having a looser design system is actually more beneficial. The second point I want to make is that everybody says they want to work at Figma and work on Figma, but I actually would challenge people to think whether they do want to do that. Because if you think about the product itself, it's basically a couple of side panels, right? Or some panels that pop out. Do you really want to be working on a really heavily gridded, less visually artistic product? Yes or no? Are you a systematic kind of thinker? If the answer is yes, that might suit you. If you're somebody who wants to work on branding and like add confetti to everywhere, then Figma's probably not the product that you want to work on. So a product designer focuses on features within larger features, I guess, because they're not individually built. So somebody would be working on auto layout, specifically, the next version. They might also be working on branching at the same time, and they typically work on sort of those larger epic features over many, many, many months to make sure it's correct. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. It's not an uncommon setup on many product companies, so good to hear. Again, I'm gonna go into the live audience here and see if anybody has mustered up the courage to ask a question like, oh, we have someone, fantastic. We have someone coming with a microphone. Okay, there we go. I think we got it right here for you. Go on.
Thank you. It's a similar question to the AI one, but I'll elaborate it a little. We are seeing a lot of tools trying to integrate AI in some way or the other in their tools. So recently we saw Notion coming up with Notion AI, which allows you to write prompts and help you with the copy that you're writing in Notion, because mostly you're writing something inside Notion. I think it's good for documentation where it creates an outline and then you can start tweaking it or expand on it. We have also seen Descript come up with an AI feature where it allows you to create a storyboard, which makes it easier to edit the video, even if you're not a video editor professionally. And then I think Pixel phones, they also always detect whether your picture needs some kind of modification, like you might have taken a picture, it could look good in portrait mode, or it could have people removed from the background, and the phone is automatically going to tell you that that picture could have that removed, and do you want to do that? And you just say yes, and it removes that. So it feels like magic. And this is not necessarily you applying something on top of the product and saying, hey, AI, please do this. It's like they have integrated it in a very nicer way inside the product, so it feels like the product is doing something magical. I would have asked if Figma is planning to do something like this, but I would change the question a little. Louis, what do you think? How can Figma leverage AI to do something like this? I'm sure there would be ways that you could improve Figma, right? By trying to integrate AI in some way or the other.
The goal, I think, of those tools is efficiency and reducing waste. The question we probably need to ask ourselves is, if we increase efficiency and reduce waste, are we okay with the potentially losing our jobs? Because we're removing ourselves from the question as a dramatic answer to that question. And the answer is obviously no. But I think what we could definitely increase efficiency of is things like prototyping and things like exporting, things like conversations and communication. At the moment, you're having to jump through a bunch of different tools to communicate your decisions and your ideas. Not that that's an AI problem to solve, but it could eventually be communicated via a descriptive language that we are suggesting. From a prototyping perspective, absolutely, we don't want to be drawing noodles across 500 frames every time we need to make a change. How can we communicate that to something that says, this to this over the whole document, please? And it just kind of knows. That's the kind of level I think that would be appropriate and supported. When you get down to things along the lines of naming your layers appropriately and naming your components and all that sort of thing, I just don't know if that's a useful use of time. I think that there are other things to be worrying about on the more production side, and the design tool should always be the ideation platform to create new things, to the point where very factually, the longer you spend inside a design tool, the further away you're getting from a product. And the more time we bake into AI into something that isn't production code, I think we're wasting time. That's just my opinion, but I think that sure, there's optimization efficiencies that we can bake into any part of design. It's things like the admin side of design is probably where you want to start, on the operational side of where does the file live, what is it called, who's owning it, can we automatically invite the right people to the right files, can the permissions be set based off the project or the goal that you have? That sounds logical, but to the point of the actual moving things around a screen, I'm not sure if the gains are going to be marginal enough, firstly for the investment, but secondly for the benefit that we'd get in the long run. I'm not saying that, and I'm speaking in a very functional way, so I'm thinking about the systems and components and styles. Artistically, different conversation. That's where you start to get to those diagram magician tool where you say, I would like a ballerina in France on ice, and it generates you loads of different stylistic choices of that imagery. That kind of makes sense, but also, is that artistic or not? And this is a sort of a wider problem with sort of art and AI more generally that I don't think I'm well equipped to answer. And it's whether we'd be comfortable with that. I remember a few years ago when every single illustration style was the same and everybody used the same unsplash photos. Would AI actually solve that or not? I'm not sure. It might make it faster to find the same. Yeah, it might make it faster to find the same photo, but you're still going to have the same photo in the end, and I just don't know if that's a benefit we want to investigate.
I like the idea of getting the admin and org part sorted out, because I think that's one thing that I want to spend the least time on.
And I think that would be a real tangible
value
saving of cost.
Yeah. Do we have any other live questions? We have time for one more live question if we have any other. Okay, if we don't have that, I have, since you were talking a little bit about, you were talking about art and AI and whatnot, it felt quite sort of a big question. So I think this is not my question. Somebody has put this question in, so I am just putting this caveat on here. I think this is an excellent question to end with. Louis, what is the meaning of life? And Figma. So that's important, that aspect. Meaning of life and Figma. This is your closing question for today.
Spend less time in design tools. Seriously. Don't get to a point where your entire personality is your design career. It's really not healthy for you. Don't get to a situation where you don't take vacation. It's really not good for you. Take more time off. Spend less time thinking about design, and you're going to become a better designer. Not speaking from personal experience.
I agree with you. Spend less time doing work and more time doing life.
Go for more walks.
Yeah. And if you end up having had too many holidays that is left by the end of the year, consider doing a 4-day week for the rest of the year. Speaking from my own experience.
I did that last year.
Absolutely amazing. Best thing that ever happened to me. That's all we have time for on this seminar. I know this was a brave decision for you to agree to this, but I think it went well. Well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
A round of applause. Cool. Okay. With that part over, before we go, are you okay there?
Switch this off.
Oh, yeah. It's difficult to switch it on, and it's difficult to switch it off. Okay, so before we go, I want to give some quick thank yous. Obviously, I want to start by thanking all the speakers. I want to thank you, James. I want to thank you, Morgane. I want to thank you, Jan. And obviously, I want to thank you, Louis, for being here and teaching us and telling us and sharing all the thoughts on design systems. As I said before, I also want to say thank you to a couple of people behind the scene. I want to thank you, my DSL team, Victoria, who's actually in the room now. Hassan has been helping out. Manuel has been helping out. There are a lot of people from Figma as well. Janine and her team that has been doing an excellent work, helping everybody getting into the building. The people who have served us some amazing food and drinks, and everybody has made this possible. Massive shout out to everybody, and thank you so much to Figma for allowing us to be in this fantastic space and for taking up all of this moment and time here. It's been great. Well, I have some fab announcements. I'm going to say fab because I think they are quite fab. So our sister community, React.js Girls, will be back with an in-person event in the new year. So for those of you who don't know, it's basically a engineering React community that are focusing on putting women on stage, talking about React. And obviously, there's a lot of connections between what they do and what we do. So if you're interested in that, you should definitely check it out. It's going to come up very soon. We also have our next DSL event planned and ready for the new year. And as my colleague Jessica mentioned earlier, Wildy is always looking for interesting talent and new projects, so do get in touch. But so, Design System London, number 6, is going to happen on the 1st of February, together with News UK, which got an amazing venue close to London Bridge, just literally by London Bridge Station. Fabulous views, so do come and join us there as well. It's going to be great. We got a whole bunch of speakers ready for that to go already, so that's going to be amazing. As I mentioned, our sister community, React.js Girls, that's also going to be, so that's a second, so that's the day after. Wow, what a week, eh? DSL one day, React.js Girls the next. Bring it on. So yeah, and if anybody here feels like, oh, I know someone who's got some really interesting things to say about React, then contact us, because we are always looking for speakers. Same thing here, we welcome speakers of all experiences. And if, as I said before, if anyone wants to speak at DSL or want to help host or sponsor, let us know. So the last thanks go to everybody. Thank you to everybody on the live stream for joining us, and thank you for everybody here who actually managed to get here today to watch us. And it's been really great. And for those of you who feel like, there's so much I want to ask, there's so much I want to chat to people about, we are going to go to Leicester Arms, which is on 44 Glasshouse Street, which I have been told is just around the corner. So if anybody wants to, we're just going to grab our stuff and we're going to go down there. That's exactly what's going to happen there. Yeah, there's going to be drinking. It's a bar. Yes.
It's a technical.
The technical
description.
Okay. So do join us there. And I think that's it. I don't think I have forgotten anything. So massive thank you to all of you. That's it. Signing off on the live stream as well. Thank everybody who's been watching from home. See you at the next DSL. Goodbye.